After Sanda faced Oshibu and declared himself the real Santa Claus, his powers proved useless against him, until the battle was suddenly interrupted by Tetsudome, the chairlady of Daikoku Academy, who stepped in and saved him. In this next arc, the perfect person to kill Santa Claus finally appears, and as the battle begins, Santa awakens a new form to face this upcoming challenge. Let's find out. The scene shifted as Oshibu confronted Yagiuta, pinning him to the floor to ask him something. While he had been fighting Santa to the death in the laundry room, he asked what exactly he had been doing. Nervous, Yagiuta stammered that he could not think of what to say, then blurted sorry. In his mind, the truth was that he had only been sleeping like crazy. In the year 2080, adults slept every day, but he knew he could never admit that to Oshibu, so he scrambled for excuses to get out of there alive. After a moment, with Oshibu still gripping his neck, Yagiuta confessed that the truth was he hated director Oshibu. Oshibu raised an eyebrow at that answer. Yagiuta explained that whenever he watched him, he thought Oshibu looked so young and beautiful, and compared to him, he felt old and ugly. He looked away and said he wished to be killed by Santa instead, and by the time he thought that, he envied his beauty so much that he missed his mission. He admitted that he was ashamed of himself. Oshibu considered this, then suddenly hauled him upright and leaned him against the wall, telling him to say more. While still holding him by the throat, he ordered Yagiuta to add anything else he had to say. Yagiuta went on that he hated him because he was the living image of endless youth. Oshibu still pressed for more, and Yagiuta admitted he wanted to lick Oshibu's skin because it looked as soft as a newborn's. In Oshibu's mind, that feeling had a name: oxytocin. He could feel it already. The most effective way to make his scars fade was to produce oxytocin, the same hormone that made women in love bloom. Because of the oxytocin Yagiuta's words produced, Oshibu's physical and emotional scars began to heal, so he released him. Yagiuta was relieved, coughing from the strangulation. Oshibu remarked that for a useless middle-aged man who only spoke the obvious, Yagiuta was just as good of a spy as ever, a statement Yagiuta had not expected. In his head, Yagiuta wondered who would have thought that the art of pleading with angry women would help him now. Oshibu tied back his hair and said there was someone at Daikoku Eigo Academy who could help him even more, a person perfect for killing Santa Claus. Meanwhile, inside the campus, Nico's voice rang out as she called Sanda-Chan. She asked him what kind of expression he thought her face was making. Was it the look of being satisfied after taking a dump, or was it an I love Kachan face? Sanda could not even respond to such a weird statement, but Nico insisted the answer was both, and he should know that already, calling him her fiancé. Sanda grew annoyed when Nico threw the leaves he had just swept up. After the storm, everything had been a disaster, so at the very least she should help him out. But Nico only delighted herself, spinning around while playing with the fallen leaves. As she twirled, Sanda warned her to watch out. She collided with another student carrying a heavy load. Concerned, Sanda asked if she was all right. The girl thanked him, though Nico was clearly displeased and told her to watch where she was going, calling her princess. But Sanda insisted it had been her fault. The girl shook her head and said she was the one to blame, that she had caused them trouble. She admitted she should not have carried everything to the classroom all at once and should have been more alert. Sanda was surprised by her reaction and told her if she wanted, he could help. Nico bristled at this, but the girl thought for a moment before saying she would appreciate his help. Sanda was pleased. Finally, here was someone who did not leave him with a bad first impression, unlike his friends Fuyumura, Amaya, and Nico, who popped into his mind. As they walked, Sanda wondered aloud about the classroom below. It was semi-underground, something he had not realized before. Nico walked with them, helping as well. The girl explained their school was so large that it was difficult to know where everything was. It felt unusually quiet down there. Sanda then asked what she planned to do with the flower pots since they looked broken after the storm. The girl admitted she had left them damaged on purpose. She then invited them to enter her classroom, introducing it as the room of Class 210, and asked them to place the pots on the podium. Inside the room, the girl thanked them, saying they had saved her. Sanda was caught off guard when he heard her say it was Class 10. He asked in surprise if there were not only 5 classes for second years. The girl explained that this class was for those who had killed an adult. The revelation stunned Sanda, and even Nico felt uneasy. An awkward silence followed as Sanda and the girl stared at each other. The girl then clarified that only a few had done it willingly, but everyone in that room, herself included, had done so. Her words made Sanda recall what Amaya had once said, that there were people who walked into school with a smile even if they had killed someone just the day before. Sanda could not comprehend the situation. They had killed adults. But the girl insisted it was not a big deal, that he should not be so shocked, admitting she felt embarrassed before him. In his thoughts, Sanda wondered why he did not realize it early on. She had purposely allowed the flower pots to break. The classroom's oddity was undeniable. The students' desks all faced away from the teacher's podium. The irregularity stood out at a glance. Nico nudged him sharply and urged him to leave, snapping him out of his daze, and he realized she was right. They excused themselves from the girl and left. As they walked away, Nico explained that it was all because of the law protecting minors. If a minor killed an adult, it was considered an accident. Great, she said. People like them were enjoying the new era to the fullest. The girl simply smiled, then suddenly brought up a new topic, saying she had heard people claim that Santa was at their school. She asked if they knew anything about that. Nico repeated the rumor that Santa was at their academy, while Sanda stayed quiet at the side. Suddenly, Nico burst out laughing, saying Santa did not exist. She teased that Namatame was so innocent to still believe in such a thing. Sanda ended up laughing along too. Namatame replied that of course she knew Santa was just a legend, but it was a shame. She would have loved the chance to meet him. Nico kept laughing, telling her not to be silly. Sanda felt awkward, thinking to himself that this was just normal girl talk. Nico then asked if it was fine for them to go, and Namatame assured her it was. She even apologized for delaying them, then said it had been a pleasure meeting them. Nico returned the courtesy, and as they left the room, she asked how much longer she planned to keep waving goodbye. She reminded Namatame not to carry a lot of heavy things. Sanda found himself thinking, was that really the face of a girl who had killed an adult? She looked so innocent and charming that it was hard to believe. Nico, on the other hand, as she closed the door, admitted once they were out of earshot that the whole encounter had been terrifying. After all, those students were murderers. She confessed she was scared out of her wits. Sanda was surprised to learn she had been just as frightened, but she explained that it was natural. Those kids were powerful, and their only real option had been to surrender. Climbing the stairs back toward their classroom, Nico mentioned she had heard many stories about Class 10. They were children who had killed adults yet were forgiven by the law. The most scariest thing of all is that the cute girl is their leader. Then she suddenly asked Sanda what came to mind when he heard the phrase super sexy lady. He blinked in confusion, not expecting such a question. Nico insisted that a modest girl, one who never showed skin, was often sexier than some busty girl flaunting herself in skimpy clothes. Outwardly, Sanda played dumb, pretending not to understand what she meant, but deep down he was interested. That only earned him a barrage of playful hits from Nico's bag as she scolded him. Girls, she said, were great at hiding their true selves, and it was way too easy to fool him since he was a guy. Her mood shifted, though, when she noticed something missing. Her beloved kitty was gone. Sanda asked if she was referring to the big keychain and asked if she lost it somewhere. She panicked, realizing she must have left it in Class 210. But she quickly added that there was no way she wanted to go back there. Seeing her worry, Sanda volunteered, saying he would go retrieve it for her. Sanda returned to the classroom of Class 210, and while standing outside the door, he admitted to himself how frightening the place was. Yet he could not forget the words of the chairlady. She had told him that if he truly wanted to change the academy, he would need to face those in the basement under the academy. At the time, he had not understood what she meant, but she had promised that if he managed to do so, only then would she allow him to train under her. Sanda thought perhaps this was what she had been referring to. He pulled on the red jacket, transforming himself once more. Her words motivated him to confront those below. At the same time, Namatame's earlier remark came back to him, that she had wished to meet Santa. That made him think. He thought he had already faced them, so perhaps he could now report back to the chairlady. He took out some gummies, telling himself he would just go back to being the child, retrieve the cat keychain, and say goodbye. But before he could act, the door suddenly swung open, and Onii-Chan stood before him. Her expression changed the moment she saw him, startling and unnerving Sanda. But almost instantly she returned to her cheerful, charming demeanor. Sanda broke out in nervous sweat at the sight. The other students of Class 10 were also present, stunned to see Santa Claus himself standing before them. Some even said that their prayers had been answered. Onii-Chan pointed her flashlight directly at him and asked if he truly was that person. Inwardly, Sanda thought how foolish he was. Realizing he would not answer, she excused it as something confidential and did not press further. Instead, she declared that they ought to give him a proper welcome and urged the class to move the desks aside. Sanda felt awkward as they busied themselves with preparations. When they finally sat down, Onii-Chan expressed her delight. There were so many witnesses from other classes, she said. They thought Santa would never appear before Class 10, but she had always known he did not discriminate among children. She then looked at him intently and confessed she wanted to know him. Sanda, caught off guard, wondered if any child had ever looked at him with such overwhelming hope before. He admitted to himself that no one ever had, not once. And so, he was unaccustomed to being treated with such kindness. Sanda thought to himself that perhaps the students of that class were there because of some emotional injury. Onii-Chan offered him tea and asked if green tea would be fine. He answered that it wasn't necessary, but she insisted, saying she was simply too happy. As she poured the tea, she admitted it was sad that no adults ever came there. Still, she had chosen to believe Santa would eventually arrive, so she continued to pray. Sanda was surprised by her words. She added that even their professors, their teachers, were too afraid to be killed there. Her classmates around them smiled continuously. Onii-Chan went on to say that everyone in Class 10 was incredibly lonely, and that was why she was deeply grateful to him. Sanda then asked if wanting to see him meant they had a wish for him. So what was it? Onii-Chan was caught off guard by the direct question about their wish. At that moment, the skis manifested again on Sanda's feet as she declared that since he was Santa, he should already know. It was then revealed that her classmates were hiding weapons behind their backs as they stood there watching. Onii-Chan, still smiling, told him that before they opened their present, why didn't he drink his tea first? Yet instead of sitting in the cup, the tea had spilled onto the floor. Meanwhile, as Nico was walking down the hallway, she looked worried about Sanda and was deep in thought. Suddenly, someone called her full name, and to her surprise, it was Fuyumura and Amaya. They asked if she knew where Sanda was because they were looking for him. With an awkward smile, she explained what had happened. They were both shocked when they heard that Sanda had gone to Class 210. Amaya couldn't believe it. Sanda was in a classroom full of adult killers. That was the most dangerous place in the entire academy, he said. Why would he even go there? Nico insisted that they shouldn't blame her. She also thought it was a bad idea for him to go there alone. But even so, Amaya admitted that he was worried about him. That's why he and Fuyumura would go find him, while Kazao should wait there. Off to the side, Fuyumura was deep in thought. Suddenly, she bent down and tugged at her shoelaces. To everyone's shock, she pulled off her boots right there in the hallway. The surrounding students gasped at the sight. Removing boots was strictly against the school rules. Still, she silenced them immediately, saying it was an emergency, and there was no way she could run while wearing those heavy boots. With that, she jumped onto the railing, boots in one hand, and called out to Amaya to come with her. Amaya hadn't expected her to actually leap down like that. Even the students on the lower level were startled to see Fuyumura making her way down. Amaya sighed and insisted he would just use the stairs like a normal person. Back in Class 210, Onii-Chan asked Santa if he knew why their school uniforms included boots. She explained that they were difficult to put on and take off, heavy and stiff. In other words, they were the chains of Daikoku Eigo Academy. Sanda grew curious when she described them as shackles. Onii-Chan continued, saying that when students didn't pay attention to their boots, it meant they were the quiet type, the kind of children loved by adults. And for that reason, removing them was strictly against the school rules. Hard to believe, wasn't it? She went on to say that they needed to realize they were prisoners, living out their youth in ignorance. Those who had rebelled against the adults were sent there into the semi-basement. She looked up at Sanda, now standing before them, called him Santa, and pleaded for him to save them. Her classmates around them also dropped to their knees. In Sanda's thoughts, Ever since he had become Santa, he was struck by the realization of how small children truly were. He grew curious, wondering what exactly she wanted him to do. Namatame smiled at him, then sat down and began removing her boots. She explained that long ago in Japan, during Christmas, Santa would place gifts inside children's stockings and boots. That was why she took off her boot and held it out toward him, asking for a gift. Sanda was caught off guard when he realized she was actually asking for a present, and he asked what she wanted. With a smile, she answered that what she desired was his thumb, something that left Sanda in complete shock. From the 10 fingers of the hand, she explained, the most problematic one to lose was the thumb. She asked him to place that gift into her boot. Sweat began to form on Sanda's face from the pressure, especially as he noticed the other kneeling students around him holding weapons. Namatame once more pleaded for him to put his finger into the boot. Sanda instinctively grabbed his hand, gripping his own fingers, anxiety tightening inside him. Namatame then pulled out a knife and said he could use it to cut off his thumb right now. Sanda was stunned by what she had just offered him. He asked what she intended to do with his finger. She threw the question back at him, asking if he was really asking what a child would do with her toy. Sanda's chest tightened at her words, his heart pounding. She pressed on, reminding him that he was supposed to be Santa. Sanda still couldn't accept it. Could his finger really be treated like a toy? What was happening there? Namatame insisted that children were free to use their toys however they wanted. In Sanda's thoughts, she was insane. She was mocking him. He told himself he couldn't just do whatever she demanded. But Namatame continued to pressure him, saying her boot was empty. Sanda was overwhelmed with confusion, unable to make sense of what his Santa instinct was telling him. He was no longer sure of anything. He told himself to stop, yet his chest kept pounding, his heartbeat racing as he stared into the gentle face of Namatame. The memory of Fuyumura's expression when she once asked him for something flashed in his mind, and he felt a strange sensation spread through his body. He collapsed onto the floor as if wrestling with himself, yet his hand moved down and he mentioned his thumb. Namatame responded that yes, that was exactly what she wanted. In Sanda's thoughts, how should Santa give the children what they desired? Was that really what he was supposed to do? He no longer knew. Suddenly, the door of Class 210 exploded open, and a voice called out the name of Fuyumura. The blast was so powerful that a huge section of the room was torn apart. In that instant, Sanda shielded Namatame with his body, something that left her stunned. Through the smoke and debris, a figure appeared, no boots, asking if that was Class 10. Covered once more in explosives, clutching both grenades and sticks of dynamite in her hands. It was Fuyumura. She apologized for the destruction, explaining that she had knocked, but no one answered, so she blew the door apart. Behind her stood Amaya, carrying her boots in his hands. Fuyumura greeted them with a good day and introduced herself as the representative of Class 3. She explained that she had brought an official statement regarding Class 10. Before continuing, she put on her boots and tried to recall exactly how the statement went. According to her, they had noticed irregularities in the proper use of the uniform, so they were requesting that everyone wear it properly, including tying shoelaces correctly and wearing the boots as instructed. She demonstrated this herself in front of them as an example before announcing that this was a warning for all the students. After her statement, Namatame was shocked when she suddenly realized that Santa, who had been beside her, had disappeared. She asked aloud where he had gone. Another student couldn't believe that Fuyumura had just blown up their wall for the sake of making that announcement. Fuyumura explained that the door had been shut, and since no one answered when she knocked, she figured that leaving a hole in the wall might help calm them down, calling them a bunch of delinquents. Having said what she came to say, she excused herself and left. Meanwhile, Sanda had already hidden himself on the other side to make his escape, while Fuyumura headed up the stairs to return to her class. However, she accidentally bumped her head on the ceiling because of her height. In Sanda's mind, he couldn't help but marvel at how surprising she really was. Shiori Fuyumura. He then thanked her. When they were finally all together again, Sanda admitted that if she hadn't shown up, he might have lost his thumb by now. But Fuyumura replied that it really wasn't that bad. After all, anyone would go armed if it was to save a friend. Amaya disagreed, saying not everyone would do that, which left Fuyumura surprised. To her, such a thing was simply normal. Hearing this made Sanda blush, and he held onto his jacket. Suddenly, he transformed, startling Fuyumura. She scolded him not to transform out of nowhere like that. Sanda quickly apologized. Still, in his thoughts, he felt that it had been a close call. His heart had been racing, but everything felt okay once he became Santa. Fuyumura then bent down slightly and asked if they had done something weird to him. He replied that they hadn't, but she pressed further, saying she was curious. She told him to just tell her. Because of that, he suddenly remembered the face of Nama-tame and the matter of a child's wish. For an inexperienced Santa, it was so intense that it felt like a knife stabbing his heart. It could be a gun or a powerful drug. Even more so for Sanda, who felt as though he was in debt because he had yet to fulfill any wish on his own. The scene then shifted to Sanda sweeping inside the school. He thought to himself not to dwell on defeating Oshibu. If he could not resolve that, he would be nothing but a disgrace to Santa. Behind him, Nico asked him to hand her the dustpan. Once more, pain surged through Sanda's chest. Nico was surprised and asked if it was strange to see her so serious about working there. He handed the dustpan to her, and she thanked him. But in his thoughts, he knew it was bad. The more he thought about it, the worse it became. He needed to do something about it. He needed to strengthen his heart. He then called out to Nico with a serious expression, something she did not expect. Sanda asked her if there was anything she wanted beyond just a dustpan. She was puzzled by the question and replied that there wasn't. She wondered what was happening to him. Then she realized that perhaps he wanted her to thank him for retrieving her keychain. But he told her that was not it. Perhaps she had something she truly desired, and so he urged her to tell him. His intensity grew, and he demanded to know what she wanted. Alarmed by how intense he had become, Nico was surprised and thought that the moment she had been waiting for had already come. She stopped herself, blushed, and with embarrassment admitted that there was one thing she wanted from him. Sanda felt pleased, believing this could help him. He insisted that she say it. Nico did not expect to be pushed into confessing and protested that she should not have to. But Sanda said it would not work if she did not say it herself. She asked why, and he insisted again. She said she was not ready, calling him a tactless idiot. Sanda wondered why she claimed she was not ready. Deep inside, he knew that Nico's whim would be perfect for giving him the strength he needed as Santa. His heart burned, eager with anticipation. Feeling pressured, Nico finally gave in, saying that she might as well say it. Whatever happened, she would just tell him, and so she declared that what she wanted was a kiss. Sanda was utterly shocked at hearing this. Nico added that after all, they were fiancés. Sanda could no longer find words to respond. All he could hear was the loud pounding of his heart. He wondered if that beat belonged to Santa or if it was his own. After receiving so many requests, he was now confused. But this was where he needed to draw the line. Santa could not possibly grant a kiss to a 14-year-old girl. He thought of his transformed state, and to do such a thing in that form felt terrifying, like a crime deserving of capital punishment. Sweat formed as panic rose in him, because if he rejected her, would that not be disgraceful for him as Santa, as a man? He was utterly confused and could not make sense of anything. Suddenly, Nico embraced him and asked if he did not want it. And still, Sanda did not know what to do. He thought of what it meant to be Santa, to be strong, to be an adult. What was the meaning of it all? Because of this, his nose began to bleed as Nico held him tightly. Alarm struck him when he realized the blood from his nose was dripping onto his clothes. He looked at his hand and thought that he was about to transform. His body began to grow larger as he tried to stop more blood from staining his clothes. The scene then shifted to Nama-tame remembering what Santa had done for her. Not only had he protected her from the explosion, but he had been sincere toward her. That was the first time an adult had ever acted that way toward her. Holding the knife in their shattered classroom, she blushed and wondered how she could possibly not fall in love like that, asking the question to Santa in her thoughts. Returning once again to Sanda, it was explained that he had a particular condition where he became Santa whenever he wore red clothing, and that caused serious problems for him. Especially when, while being embraced by Nico, he had a nosebleed, and the blood dripped onto his shirt. As he desperately tried to stop it from staining his clothes, he realized this was bad. Because of it, his body kept growing larger. With no choice left, he tore off his shirt. Nico was shocked at what he did and let go, staring at his exposed upper body. but she quickly turned her gaze away in surprise just as Sanda returned to normal. She glanced at him again and demanded to know what he thought he was doing. Sanda himself couldn't answer. Nico pressed on, telling him not to get so excited just because she had asked him for a kiss. She never had any intention of letting it go that far. In Sanda's thoughts, neither did he, so he could only apologize. He was terrified of being discovered, but thankfully he had managed to transform back at the last second. Nico, however, called him a moment-ruining bastard, saying that this was his last chance. She told him not to embarrass further. Sanda was puzzled, but Nico pressed forward, declaring that it was round 2, for real this time. Sanda had not expected that. She stepped closer and told him to just give her the kiss already. Sanda was uneasy. It was a direct request, and if he refused, he felt he would fail to grow, either as Santa or as a man. It was an intense demand, but for that same reason, he knew he had to go through with it. With his heart pounding, he pleaded with both his 14-year-old heart and Santa's heart to be strong. He placed his hand on Nico's shoulder, only to suddenly freeze as he thought about it. As cliché as it sounded, he asked himself, when was the right time to close his eyes? His stress level spiked. If he closed his eyes, how would he know where Nico's lips were? Glancing around in panic, he realized that he had never even had a first kiss before. And so, he blurted out bathroom, which utterly stunned Nico. Sanda apologized, claiming his stomach hurt. He excused himself, apologizing again, but saying he would be right back. Nico told him to stop, but he continued to run away. She was left wondering what was wrong with him. As he ran, Sanda apologized in his heart to Nico, admitting to himself that he was an inexperienced Santa. He called himself pathetic. But suddenly, from the narrow passageway between the buildings, a hand holding a rope shot out and grabbed him, and Sanda screamed as he was caught. It turned out to be Yagiyuta. He had captured Sanda and remarked how nice it was that Sanda had escaped from cleaning just to act lovey-dovey with a girl. He called them lovebirds and said that youth really was full of romance. He admitted he was jealous. Sanda struggled against his grip. Yagiyuta asked if he was already going out with that girl. Annoyed, Sanda yanked his shirt so he could put it on and transform again. He snapped that the timing of his entrance was terrible, adding that he had something important he needed to do. But Yagiyuta warned him not to continue his relationship. If Santa Claus ever entered a romantic relationship with a child, he said, Santa would die. He explained that Sanda's body wouldn't be able to carry the weight of that guilt, and that was why he was warning him. In his mind, Yagiyuta added that he had also been ordered to bring Sanda back alive. If Sanda died, then his chance at promotion would be gone. Sanda was stunned by that revelation, but he realized he had already thought about it himself. Every time his heart pounded for his female classmates, he felt a stab of guilt. He wondered what would happen if he actually kissed Nico. Yagiyuta struck him hard across the head and insisted that if he did it, he would die instantly. Yet, upon hearing that, Sanda felt a strange relief. If staking his life was what it took to give her a kiss, then he had no reason to feel guilty anymore. With all his strength, he punched Yagiyuta in the face. He declared that he was Santa and he would grant her wish. So Yagiyuta should stop interfering. The force of the punch knocked Yagiyuta down, but he struggled to his feet, pulled a gun, and aimed it at Sanda. He shouted that he would not let him go. First of all, kissing her just because he thought it was his responsibility was rude. But Sanda turned his back on him. Yagiyuta demanded to know if he was even listening and ordered him to stop. He pressed further, saying it would not be sincere if he only did it because the girl had asked. Sanda answered that that was just how 14-year-old boys were. Yagiyuta froze when he heard that. Memories came flooding back to him. Memories of when he himself had been 14. A young girl once called him Saburo and asked if they were already going out. He was startled by the question and, though unsure, replied that they were. When she handed him a pair of matching bracelets, he accepted them with a smile, but in his mind, he knew he didn't actually want them. Later, when she invited him to hold hands, he agreed, though inwardly he admitted he didn't really like it. The memory left him disheartened. Sanda had been right all along. Even so, Sanda thanked him for worrying about him. He said that words coming from a real man carried more weight, and he himself wanted to become a true man as soon as possible. For that reason, he ate his gummies to return to his normal state. Because for that reason, he would go through with it. He went back to Nico, who was waiting for him, his chest still pounding. Facing her, He was now determined to kiss her. He resolved that he would risk his life for this, like a true man and like Santa. When he finally arrived, Nico told him he was too slow. Sanda thought to himself that he would now face the desire standing right in front of him. Nervous, he stepped closer to Nico and called out to her. Hidden behind a tree, Yagi-Uda watched nervously. Both Sanda and Nico were flustered. Nico called him Ka-chan. As their lips were about to meet, Nico suddenly leaned forward and kissed Sanda on the cheek instead, leaving him stunned. Yagi-Uda, too, hadn't expected what he saw. Sanda could only clutch his cheek while Nico called him a brat. She said she would forgive him with just a kiss on the cheek. And with that, Sanda's heart was safe. The two returned to cleaning, with Nico handing Sanda the broom. From the sidelines, Yagi-Uda clutched his chest, muttering that it was bad for his old heart. The scene then shifted to Fuyumura. As she looked at Ono, she came to a realization about what women truly were. Out of nowhere, they suddenly became adults, and they just kept getting prettier without stopping. When she realized that, she felt that she was completely different now. Ono's physical appearance already carried signs of maturity. While the two of them were talking inside the room, Fuyumura asked if she was really sure, and Ono answered yes. She then offered her the last dango. They always shared a 3-pack, and they usually decided who got the last one by playing a game. But Ono told her not to worry, saying she was already full. Fuyumura's face showed amazement. Ono had been the first among them to hit puberty. That, she thought, was only natural. Her face and her body were becoming more and more feminine. But there was more to it than just that. She paused, remembering when they used to play for the last dango. Back then, when they played rock, paper, scissors, Fuyumura always won because she only ever chose rock. Ono hugged her and said she should have just told her that earlier. At the time, Ono was still a girl with glasses and a carefree smile. As Fuyumura looked at the stick of dango in front of her, she thought to herself that the abandoned dango meant much more than what it was. While she was staring out the window, Ono called her name and said she's already thinking of leaving. Fuyumura was surprised as she bit into the leftover dango. Ono told her that the time had come for them to say goodbye. Now that she had become an adult, she could no longer stay at Daikoko Eigo Academy. Even so, she said she wanted to make memories with her. She reminded her of the promise they had made at their coming-of-age ceremony. Fuyumura stayed silent, but in her mind, she realized that they could have just split the dango in half. Before she even finished eating it, she had already realized how childish she was compared to how mature Ono had become. Then she left the room and walked toward her class. Yagi-Uda announced to the class that the coming-of-age ceremony was next week and that it was a very important event for all of them. He said their most beloved teacher would be watching them while drinking alcohol. When they heard that, the students chatted excitedly. Some asked about what they would wear, others complained that the photos they took last time turned out ugly. Some arranged to walk together. Meanwhile, Fuyumura stayed quiet. She asked Sanda if he would participate in the event, and he sounded surprised. At the coming-of-age ceremony each year, the children who were about to turn 15 celebrated the peak of their life and beauty. There would be a parade and festivities to celebrate the 5 remaining years they had to enjoy themselves. Sanda answered that he did not want to draw attention, so yes, he would also join because he wanted to eat good food. In his head, he was already used to hiding his identity. Fuyumura said she understood and that they should enjoy the event. Everyone was overjoyed that the ceremony was coming. Namatame was excited too. After all, the event promoted the idea that children were sacred while adults were worthless. She spoke privately with Principal Oshibu, who agreed with her completely. He urged her to finish the job he had asked of her. They said she was an adult-killing pro, and yet somehow she had let Santa go the other day. She told him not to worry, and said that she would ensure to find and kill Santa in the coming-of-age ceremony. The principal added that it's not every day that an adult comes to their school for her to kill, so he offered her weapons as dedicated material, knives, and some kinds of guns. He pointed out that Santa was almost immortal and asked if she could really kill him. Blood suddenly stained the smiling face of Namatame as a loud noise echoed. She could not believe his question. Again, there was a loud thud and more blood spattered across her face. She said he seemed to doubt her. She looked away and admitted, of course she had doubts too, but how could the principal motivate a child if he doesn't believe in them? The blood on her face, it turned out, came from the principal, who had been mercilessly shot while seated. She simply whispered, "Oh no." It would be awful for Director Oshibu to fall from his chair, so she stopped firing. He was drenched in blood, his guts even spilling out. Namatame apologized because she could think of no other way to gain his confidence. She asked now if it was enough, if she had earned his trust. But he just replied that it was almost lunchtime. With his insides exposed, Oshibu only laughed mischievously. He praised her openness, arrogance, and youthfulness as marvelous. He stood and his intestines fell to the floor. He said that if not for those artificial organs, he would be dead. He approached her and placed his hand in her head, saying she had passed. She had managed to wreck 2 billion worth of artificial organs, and yet he said he was proud of her. Namatame brightened at that. However, she did not stop there. She lifted the gun to aim for his head. Luckily, Oshibu ducked quickly, and when he returned, he checked his forehead. Smiling, Namatame said she was right. His brains was real. Oshibu was pleased and declared he would entrust the coming-of-age ceremony to Fumi Namatame. He ordered her to make sure Santa Claus hiding in their academy would be killed. Meanwhile, the students busied themselves with preparations. Sanda could be seen carrying a box, accompanied by Amaya, to visit Ono, who was with Fuyumura. Back with Namatame, she said the director should just leave that task to her, and Santa would not be the only one she'd kill. If any other adults appeared at the ceremony, she would kill them too. The boxes Sanda carried contained kimonos, and Ono brightened when she opened them. In the next scene, we went to Chairlady Tetsudome's room. Here, Sanda was massaging the chairlady while in his Santa Claus form, and as he was doing so, Tetsudome told him that, by the way, she wanted to ask him something. She asked if the only garments Santa Claus ever wore were red. While Sanda was thinking of an answer, he explained to us that whenever he came, the chairlady was always in her office. He added that according to her, she could spend her final days here in peace and happiness. Furthermore, he said that every time he came, she made him massage her for several hours. After thinking for a moment, he answered Tetsudome and said that he heard from his mother about a black Santa, but added that personally, he thought Santa should be red. Tetsudome understood this and commented that it was usually said that red was a color of passion and justice. She added that it was aggressive and vulgar, and she hated it. Because of that, Sanda fell silent and felt awkward, and added to his earlier explanation to us that they did nothing but chat. In his mind, he said that he thought if he kept coming, the chairwoman would show him how to fight. Because he got distracted while thinking, his massages became softer, so Tetsudome shouted at him to go harder. Sanda tried to add more pressure with his hands and asked if that was enough, but Tetsudome told him to press harder. He applied more strength again, but it still wasn't enough for her. He pushed his hands even harder because of that and asked if that was what she wanted, but again Tetsudome told him to add even more force. He continued to increase the weight of his hands, but the chairwoman just kept demanding that he use more force. Completely confused, he wondered what was happening here, saying he couldn't hit her any harder and asked himself what exactly the chairlady was trying to assess. Unexpectedly, Tetsudome grabbed his right index finger and snapped it effortlessly, leaving him staring at it in shock. Right after that, she gave him a swift kick to the chin, making him tilt his head upward and stumble back. His eyes widened in surprise, and he didn't even have a chance to react. He completely fell over afterward, and while she stretched her shoulder, Tetsudome told him that if he kept holding back in front of kids and Andes, he would be done for, reminding him as well to take care of himself. She also informed him that Fumi Namatame from Class 10 was after his head, and told him it was time to begin his preparations while fixing her sleeves. Sanda groaned from the pain of his broken finger, so Tetsudome told him that the pain he was feeling meant he lacked the determination to fight. He then asked how she knew that that student was after his head, and the chairwoman pointed out to him that this was her academy, so she knew everything happening inside it. Afterward, she told him to kill that girl before she killed him, and asked if he was okay with that. Sanda then shouted in shock, asking what the hell was wrong with her and questioning if she wasn't the chairlady. She smacked him on the head right after and explained that what she meant was for him to use that courage to confront the kids. While he held his head from the hit, Tetsudome pointed that out and said that he lacked courage. She then started removing her blazer and got ready to fight. telling him that she would not let him go until he managed to land a hit on this old lady with all his strength. However, Sanda could not bring himself to hurt an elder and just slumped down. But when he lifted his head, his eyes widened in shock at what he saw. It was then revealed that Chairlady Tetsudome had suddenly appeared younger right in front of him. She pointed out afterward that he treated those older than him as elders and the children as infants. She added that she had already told him before that if he was always worried about people's ages, he would never see them for who they truly were. After that, she challenged him to come at her while calling him Santa. Suddenly, Sanda's view of her shifted back to seeing her as an old lady when she charged at him, saying that if he would not come at her, then she would be the one to go at him instead, and in his great shock, he could not move. He tried stepping back while wondering what it was that he had seen earlier and whether that was a vision of Tetsudome's youth, while she had already closed in on him. Fortunately, he managed to dodge slightly and thought with unease that he needed to calm down because there was a 95-year-old lady in front of him. Tetsudome began to charge at him again, catching his attention. He managed to block her incoming attack with his arm while stepping back, and he declared with emphasis that he wanted to become a Santa and a strong adult. He said he could not imagine how hitting her would help him, then declared that she would help him become one. This made Tetsudome think for a moment, and after landing, she asked him if he truly wanted to grow up without hurting anyone and without knowing about sin. She then declared that it was complete nonsense. Sanda stared at her with a look of disbelief and slowly began to think deeply. Before long, his eyes suddenly gleamed sharply, and it was as if he had locked in on her. A moment later, he charged at Tetsudome, and while doing so, he said in his mind that this person probably already knew what was about to happen. As he readied his fist, he added that the finger the chairlady had broken was black and swollen, and he could hardly feel it anymore. His punch landed solidly on Tetsudome's face, and as it happened, he explained that neither did he feel her wrinkled cheek nor her teeth and gums. He added that ignoring his own pain and the pain of others, separating things, and acting like an adult, this was what it meant. Tetsudome was knocked back and hit the wall behind her, and while rising to her feet, she said with a hint of amusement that Sanda had put on a wonderful color. After that, it was shown to us that Sanda suddenly found himself wearing a black suit and tie after overcoming his thoughts, and Tetsudome beheld him as a black Santa. Sanda, however, was shaken and worried about Tetsudome's teeth, so she showed him her mouth and explained that it was fine. She said she had no teeth, so there was no damage there. He immediately rushed to her apologizing profusely, to which the chairlady asked why he was apologizing, and reminded him that she had told him to punch her. She smiled at him afterward and said that, well, this was a small step toward adulthood. She congratulated him while he was still shaken by what had happened. In his mind, he commented that he was affected by this more than by an insult, and he also thought about the words to be a strong adult and to be a strong Santa. After that, in the next scene, while Sanda was walking by the side of their school, he wondered to himself if he had to become so very black just to defeat a little old lady. Because of that, he felt disheartened and commented that it seemed to him like he was walking down the wrong path. He also thought about what might happen if he interacted with children as Black Santa. He hoped that he would become red when he transformed next time. Namatame then noticed him as he walked lost in thought, so she called his attention and greeted him. When he turned toward her, she introduced herself and reminded him that they had already met before, and his eyes widened in fear and nervousness. She happily shouted out and commented that she knew it, saying that since she had so few friends, it was easy for her to recognize Sanda right away, while Sanda nervously greeted her back. Namatame then commented what a coincidence, to which Sanda awkwardly laughed and agreed. After that, Namatame suddenly asked him if he was avoiding her, which made him even more nervous, but he still answered directly that of course not. Sanda turned to look behind him after answering, thinking anxiously to himself that she was so intimidating. Even with all his training, he was still afraid to face her, but he gave himself a pep talk not to be intimidated. After calming himself, he turned back to Namatame and asked if she always walked around carrying withered plants, while inwardly commenting how creepy that was. Namatame apologized to him and explained that they simply calmed her, then added that she liked withered plants. She further explained that whenever she passed by the school, she always looked for withered plants, but added that she had not found any good ones that day. Because of that, Sanda asked her why she liked withered plants, and Namatame answered that she was an adult killer from class 10, pointing out that she must be sick in the head. After that, Sanda explained to us here that he did not know why, but he found himself following her, who only walked in the damp shadows where no one else ever goes through. While doing this, he thought to himself that this was his chance to make a move using his newfound Black Santa form. He recalled Tetsurome's words that Namatame was after his head, and he said that just like how a drop of ink could dirty up water, he felt that he could never be the same again. He added that Black Santa had no pity. He pointed out that that girl had killed an adult and was now planning to kill him too, then said that naughty children deserve punishment. If necessary, he thought, that even included physical punishment, and if this was one of those cases, he could transform right now and teach her a lesson. His thoughts were cut off when Namatame suddenly grabbed his hand. He stared at her in shock as he saw her sitting on the ground. Excitedly, she pointed out to him that there was a pile of dry leaves there, saying they were lucky. She invited him to touch them too, which made him curious, but after a moment he did it anyway. As they lay side by side on the mound of leaves, Namatame told him to close his eyes and feel the leaves. She said it was true that she had never stopped to think about why she liked withered plants. She pointed out the texture of the lack of water, the roots and stems, dry and thin, then said that they reminded her of her mother. Namatame began to explain that yes, even with the technology of this era, rejuvenating the hands was still difficult. She said that her mother looked 20 years old thanks to various surgeries, but only her hands were 40. She explained that since elementary school, every time she came home, her mother's body became more and more distinct. It was then shown here in a scene where both Namatame and her mother sat together inside their house full of plants, and her mother told her that this was the least that everyone did. She explained to her that if you had a cavity, you went to the dentist. If you had wrinkles, you went to a plastic surgeon. Then her mother asked her if she knew how valuable youth was today. In her mind, she thought that her eyes were like her mother's, and then nodded happily in answer to her mother's question. After that, she explained that so her mother would never forget her smile. She, who looked like her, would continue to smile. She said that she had become better at faking her smiles. She continued explaining that in that house, abandoned by her father and brother because of their fear of her, the only things that kept that family standing were her smile and her mother's hands. While both Namatame and her mother lay together on the bed, the channel on their television, Itagaki Pharmaceutical, was broadcasting that youth was the nation's treasure and encouraged them to drink young and powerful, which seemed to be a drug of some kind, adding that they should get rejuvenated. Namatame then rose from the bed and told her mother that she was going to take a bath and asked her to wait for her, to which her mother agreed. After she left the room, her mother's smile seemed to vanish and was replaced with an expression that looked more like worry. A few moments later, while Namatame was finishing up in the bathroom, she noticed boxes of medicine in their trash bin. Because of that, she commented in her mind that her mother was taking more and more drugs and said that it couldn't be good. She decided then and there that she had to stop her mother from continuing to take them. Namatame went back into their room and called out to her mother. She went closer and asked if she was in pain and if she was okay. Because of that, her mother questioned her back and asked what happened and where those questions were coming from, to which she answered that it was because she loved her so much and worried about her. Her mother replied how kind she was while taking her hand and gently patting it. When she tried to hold her mother's hand, it suddenly seemed to weaken, and her mother explained of course, and asked hadn't she noticed that she had been getting thinner. As she lifted her mother's hand, she was horrified to see that what she was holding was already a severed hand. It turned out that her mother herself had cut it off using a cleaver, and she was stunned for a moment when she realized it. She dropped it right after as her mother apologized to her while frightening her in the process. Terror filled Namatame's face, and her smile disappeared. Her mother hugged her afterward and added that because of this, she was finally fully rejuvenated. She explained that she could no longer live with those hands. But a 10-year-old girl with perfect skin, she said, could never understand how she felt, and it was clear on Namatame's face how deeply this moment scarred her. At that moment, Nama-Tame thought that her smile, her mother's hands, and this house no longer made sense. Afterward, it was shown that she picked up the cleaver her mother was holding and prepared to strike. When it came down, it was revealed to us that her mother had closed her eyes, now bleeding. After that, we returned to the present, where Nama-Tame added that strangely, her mother's dead body reminded her of how she looked when she was happy, but she did not regret it. If aging was that painful, she said, then it was better to pacify them right away. She added that after she started to think that way about adults, she realized she was already in class 10. But if she could, she said she wanted to hold her mother's hands again, those big and wrinkled hands. Sanda then noticed that Nama-Tame was reaching out with her hands as if searching for something, and he suddenly called her. While thinking that she was truly trying to remember her mother, he thanked her for telling him those things. Nama-Tame's eyes widened upon hearing this, and it turned out that Sanda had taken her hand, but unfortunately, he suddenly transformed into his Santa Claus form, which shocked and worried him deeply. Sanda stared at the lying Nama-Tame with a nervous expression. He anxiously thought that he had done it again, apparently having a bad habit of acting before thinking. He also never expected that he would end up revealing his identity to a girl who wanted to kill Santa. He tried to slowly release his hold from Nama-Tame's hand, but suddenly she gripped his hand tightly so that he could not pull away, which deeply shocked him. Fortunately, Nama-Tame still did not turn her head, so she had not yet seen his face. While caught in this tense situation, they heard some of their schoolmates talking from afar. After that, he explained inwardly that she kept holding his hand until he finally let go. He then wondered what her plan was and if she was only pretending not to notice his sudden change, and quickly decided that it would be better for him to return to being a child. So he ate a Pachiko gummy. He immediately reverted to his child form, and Nama-Tame suddenly asked, by the way, what his name was. He stuttered for a moment and thought he should not say it since his name was too similar to Santa's, worrying that if he told her now, she would realize he was Santa. But despite this, he still told Nama-Tame that his name was Sanda. Upon hearing it, Nama-Tame sat up and smiled, calling out his name. She told him that they would meet again at the coming-of-age ceremony and that she could not wait, whereupon he stared at her and added to her words that she could not wait to kill him. He thought that was what she meant by it, and considered it a declaration of war, explaining that he had been caught up in danger many times before to know how to discern murderous intent. He asked inwardly if she wanted to kill him, and if she wanted to continue killing adults until she buried the memory of her mother. He and Santa deep within him resolved to give everything they could to respond to the wishes of children. He looked at his hand and said that he would not fight the girl who had taken his hand, and that he wanted to become Black Santa again. Therefore, he decided that he would survive her murderous intent. For that reason, he asked for Amaya's help, and inside their school gymnasium, he explained to him that he wanted him to shoot him with a real gun while he was in his Santa Claus form, and the shock was clear on Amaya's face at that request. He strongly encouraged him to shoot and keep shooting without stopping, saying it was training, and even excused himself by saying that even Professor Yagiuda had been kind enough to advise him. Because of that, Yagiuda was struck silent and asked since when had he been so respectful toward him, pointing out that he was his enemy too, or had he forgotten, while Amaya shouted in deep alarm for him to wait. He said they should first take a breath and calm down, reasoning that he was just a cowardly brat trying to act tough. He suggested that perhaps it would be better if Miss Violence, Fuyumura, did it instead. Yagiuda caught their attention, and as he rolled up his sleeves, he asked if it was true that Santa was immortal, where Sanda answered probably, and explained that the problem was that he still felt pain. After that, Yagiuda immediately instructed Amaya on how to hold the gun and told him not to drop it because it was dangerous, and worry showed on Amaya's face. He explained that the gun was already armed and ready, and pointed out that Amaya should pull the slide to chamber the bullet, which left Amaya looking utterly confused. He then aimed Amaya's arm and reminded him to cover his left hand with his right, arms out, eyes open, aim, then fire. Amaya tried to say wait a moment and cried out not to, but he could not stop it anymore and had already pulled the trigger, sending the bullet flying into Sanda's left chest. Outside the room, it was shown that they were able to do this because they had reserved it and posted a sign that people inside would hear explosive noises. Amaya looked extremely panicked after he did it, while Yagiyuta quietly observed. Despite what he suffered, Sanda still managed to plant his feet firmly on the ground without collapsing. As smoke rose from his body, he said seriously that the murderous intent of that attack was still not enough. Because of that, he shouted at Amaya to do it properly, which stunned Amaya and left him staring at him. Yagiyuta looked at Amaya and told him not to be startled, explaining that he did not die when he shot him, and Amaya replied that was not the issue. Yagiyuta added that if the recoil was too strong, he could bend his arms. Just as Amaya was about to reason, Yagiyuta irritably shouted that he would not work overtime without being paid, then pushed him again to shoot, while Sanda shouted that this time he should shoot him in the head and to hurry up. Amaya began to feel dizzy from the overwhelming pressure put on him, while the two kept pushing him to shoot. Before long, Amaya became irritated, and while trembling as he pointed the gun at Sanda, he said that in reality, adults were the worst, to which Sanda praised him and said that was exactly what he should do. Amaya commented in his mind with irritation that what Sanda should have said was sorry or thanks, then called him a bastard. He thought that maybe Sanda should put himself in his position to understand what he was feeling. He had been forced into helping with this training and shooting his friend. As he aimed carefully at Sanda, he slowly pulled the trigger, and because of that the bullet flew and struck solidly at Sanda's forehead. Yagiyuta's eyes widened and his mouth dropped open when he saw it, while Amaya squeezed his eyes shut after doing it. Sanda groaned while enduring the pain and before long cried out loudly at how painful it was, exclaiming that he thought he was going to die from it. After that, he praised Amaya and told him to do it again, which made Amaya recoil in shock and blurred in disbelief if he was for real and whether he still wanted to continue. Not long after, Amaya continued shooting at Sanda, not stopping at all, so the loud gunshots and Sanda's groans of pain resounded all around. As they continued that training method for a long time, the night passed and morning came. It was then shown that Amaya's face was covered in Sanda's blood spatter as he cried and panted, while Sanda's eyes still burned with determination. Exhausted, Amaya said that there were no bullets left, then threw the gun to the floor. It was also shown what Sanda looked like after receiving countless bullets into his body. His blood was splattered across the wall and the floor, his body was filled with craters, and bullet shells littered the ground. As he looked at Amaya, Sanda commented inwardly that within a single night, a child could mature and become stronger. He added that there was nothing scarier in this situation than having a child as his enemy. Amaya commented that at last it was over, while he continued speaking in his mind that even though he would never allow Fumi Namatame to kill him, he also could not let her kill him. Sanda then called Amaya, and with a look of awe, he reached out his hand to him and thanked him. In the next scene, they continued this kind of training, and because of that, Amaya gradually improved in using the pistol. He practiced how to quick reload and shoot, which he managed to do smoothly. Afterward, while the three of them were having lunch, Yagiyuta proudly commented that brats really learned so fast, and because of that he would treat them to their meal. Sanda thanked him for the ramen he received, while Amaya remarked that learning how to use a gun at the age of 14 made him feel like a child soldier, which puzzled Yagiyuta, who said he was exaggerating. Because of that comment, Amaya became irritated and questioned the claim that he was just exaggerating, pointing out that they had forced him to shoot his immortal friend like a maniac. He pointed out as well that he was on the verge of a nervous breakdown and asked how much longer they would continue that kind of training. He added, "And what about the wounds he had inflicted on Sanda?" To which Sanda explained that the wounds he got as Santa healed when he returned to being a child, but the grave wounds had left bruises. Amaya then said that the wounds of Santa healed easily, but the wounds of his heart did not, and Sanda remarked that it seemed to be the case, then apologized to him. But Amaya only said that savage training like that was not okay. Amaya stood up after that, and as he walked away, he said that the way he see it, Sanda was trying to strengthen himself as a man, not as Santa, which made Sanda stand as well and shout that he was wrong and that he was doing his best. Yagiyuta side commented whether it was okay to shout like that, while adding that he was doing his best to become the best Santa possible, and asked if Amaya could hear that. When the two children left, Yagiyuta looked at their ramen bowls and said that they had eaten them all completely and just left without a word. In the next scene, the focus shifted to Fuyumura and Ono, where Fuyumura was applying Cutix on Ono. Fuyumura slipped while applying it and apologized, saying she was not good at it, which made Ono laugh and tell her not to worry. She added that she never really liked manicures because she thought her fingers would be cursed. Fuyumura blushed and agreed, but added that since the coming-of-age ceremony was tomorrow, it would not be bad for the day. Ono thanked her for doing her the favor and said it made her happy. She then stared at her intently with eyes that seemed to shine, which made Fuyumura nervously glance down at the floor and wonder why Ono was looking at her like that while they sat in silence. Afterward, she pointed out that Ono should be laughing at her for being bad at what they were doing, where Ono said she could no longer do that, especially not when she tried so hard in everything she did. Because of this, Fuyumura asked why not, and if it was because she was now an adult, and Ono answered that it was not only that, but also because she loved her. Fuyumura was shocked and her eyes widened. Then she replied that she loved her too, and explained that when she disappeared, she had searched for her to the point of nearly going insane. Ono then began unbuttoning her dress, while saying that she had wanted to tell Fuyumura at the ceremony that she thought her love and Fuyumura's love were different. Because of that, Fuyumura became confused and asked how, so Ono invited her to find out. Then Ono fully removed her button dress and showed her breasts to Fuyumura, asking what she felt when she saw her naked. Fuyumura broke into heavy sweat after seeing that, while Ono said that if it were her and she saw Fuyumura naked, her heartbeat would certainly speed up and she would be content. She added that she wouldn't be able to think about anything else, but asked Fuyumura if it was true that she did not feel the same way. Fuyumura shouted that what she was saying was a lie and pointed out that when Ono saw a body like hers, she would feel nothing, but Ono shouted back that what she said was true. Ono then told her to strip and find out, which greatly shocked Fuyumura. Ono looked at her in a seductive way, which made Fuyumura immediately cry out that she agreed, while thinking that she was afraid of her silence. She then began to slowly undress while commenting that it was not as if they had never seen each other without clothes before, and remarked in her thoughts that she suddenly responded to Ono without thinking. Before long, she had removed all her clothing, and so both she and Ono were naked. Ono then said that she felt as if she had done something terrible, and pointed out that this was like an adult forcing a child to undress, commenting that it's the worst. Fuyumura shook her head and said it was not like that, but in her mind she admitted that still, even though they were both 14, Ono had already developed breasts, while she herself was only a girl whose height was increasing, so she said that they were completely different. Ono then brought her hand close and told her she was beautiful. While holding her face, she told her to be honest and asked if it was true that she liked Sanda. The question did not sit well with Fuyumura, who felt irritation, so she quickly stood and shouted back at her, asking what she was talking about. She also asked if love and hate were the only things that ran through the minds of adults. Ono slumped and said that she had made many friends while she was gone, which was good and something she could not be blamed for. Because of that, Fuyumura shouted again that exactly, she and Sanda were only friends. She also told her that she was sick of it. Just as she was about to say who cared whether they were adults, children, or women, she did not finish and just walked out of the room, so Ono tried calling after her. In the next scene, the focus returned to Sanda and Amaya, where Sanda asked Amaya to stop being angry. He pointed out that they would be turning off the lights soon, so he told him to come along and return to the dorms together. However, Amaya irritably pulled his hand away and shouted at him to shut up. Just as he was about to say not to talk to him, something caught his attention at their side, which also made Sanda turn his head, and they saw Fuyumura running toward them furiously. Fuyumura appeared entirely focused as she ran, still completely naked, which made Sanda's eyes widen in shock, and he cried out. She immediately hugged Sanda when she reached him, while Amaya quickly took off his jacket. He covered Fuyumura with his jacket, while Sanda, utterly bewildered, asked what she was doing being naked, where Fuyumura said that in her childishness she had suddenly walked out without wearing anything, which confused Sanda. After that, Fuyumura asked him to bring back Ono, which made Sanda think that this was the first wish he had received as Santa. Fuyumura then began asking where Ono had gone, if she would not return to what she was before, and if it was no longer possible for an adult to become a child again. She said that if he was Santa, then he should make her come back, and she pointed out that he had promised. Amaya stared at her as this happened, while Sanda hugged Fuyumura to comfort her. While that was happening, the focus shifted suddenly to Ono, who was taking some alone time inside the bathroom. Suddenly, someone commented behind her that looking good when they're troubled is an adult privilege. Because of that, she turned her attention and looked back, and when she did, she saw that Oshibu was there, who then reached for her ear and asked her to lend him her troubles, while calling her a fellow adult. In the next scene, Yagi-Uta explained to us that the childhood ceremony begins at sunset. In the few minutes after the sun sets, also called the magic hour, the sky just before night fully falls is said to be at its most beautiful, much like how people are considered most beautiful at 15 years old, before they become full adults. After that, we return to a point in time where Saburo Yagi-Uta was only 15 years old, and at that time, the coming-of-age ceremony was taking place. Here, a girl was confessing to him that she liked him, and asked him to tell her his answer about that. Yagi-Uta became nervous here and started to stutter and could not utter a single word. Then, the present Yagi-Uta explained to us that when he was 15, he hated it. The blushing cheeks of the girl he was speaking to, him sweating and unable to say anything, and the beautiful sunset. He added that from so much shame, he thought that he did not want to be there and that it was ridiculous. At that moment, he began to laugh nervously and awkwardly, as if he could not control it. Because of this, the girl began to feel confused and troubled, but he continued laughing and gradually made it louder, which made others around them look at him with confusion and worry. The girl who had confessed to him was then pulled away by her companion, who worriedly said they should leave because he was going crazy, while he just continued laughing as if he had truly lost his mind. After that, we returned to the present, and Yagi-Uta told Sanda and Amaya that that was the tragic story of Professor Yagi-Uta's coming-of-age ceremony. He told them to learn from him and not to ruin their youth just for the sake of saving face. However, Amaya only said that he would never make such a mistake, while Sanda, now with a hairstyle like Amaya's, remarked that little Yagi-Uta was really adorable and added a question about what kind of memory that was, which left Yagi-Uta speechless at their reactions. He then explained that at that time, it was believed that if you confessed or asked for something during the sunset of the coming-of-age ceremony, it would come true, to which Amaya, with some doubt, asked if people still believed in that, while Sanda, with curiosity, said that he did not know that. Sanda then thought of something and questioned if it was possible that Namatame would come to kill him at that time, which made Yagi-Uta look at him silently. After that, Yagi-Uta started escorting and pushing them out of his classroom while telling them not to worry about that, and that for now they should just enjoy themselves. He explained that the coming of age was a festival for children, while Amaya got angry because the way he was pushing them hurt. Yagi-Uta added that if something happened, he would help them, at which Sanda suddenly said that when he grew up, he wanted to be like him. Because of that, Yagi-Uta hit him on the head and told him not to say stupid things, and urged him to get out already. He reasoned that if they stayed close to him, he could not smoke, and then drove them away again like animals, which made Sanda angrily retort that he had never worried about that before. Not long after, Sanda and Amaya waved goodbye, saying see you later, while Yagi-Uta began to comment in his mind that now that he thought about it, it had been a long time since he had had a relationship with anyone. From the day he failed to respond to that girl's confession, he said he had never changed. He said he was afraid of relating to others, so he lived precariously. He added that he shared the most significant moments of his life with alcohol and cigarettes. When he was about to continue about himself in reality, the scene suddenly shifted to Daikoku Igo Academy, where the coming-of-age ceremony was being held. Here, Sanda commented that they really put effort into it every year. The stalls, the courtyard, all the decorations, and even an open bar. Amaya then said that in other words, they were in an era where children were overly pampered. It was then shown to us, the beautiful and lively event they attended. As he looked at all of it, Sanda commented in his mind that it was as if everything there was telling them not to become adults, while Amaya was asking where Fuyumura was. Sanda continued noticing the details, like lilies placed where they were difficult to wither and everything under the shade of a pine tree, a symbol of immortality. When he was just about to comment about how this festival compared being 15 to the sunset, someone suddenly called out to him, calling him Ka-chan, catching his attention. It turned out to be Nico, who immediately sat beside him while happily saying that at last she had found him, thanking him and saying it made her truly happy. Amaya then remarked that they had not said anything yet about her appearance, which made Nico angry at him and silence him while calling him comb-over mannequin. After that, she pointed out to Sanda that the sun was about to set and invited him to go somewhere so they could enjoy it better, where Sanda tried to reason, while Amaya was left speechless because Nico had given him a weird nickname. Sanda could not escape, and Nico pulled him along to the place she wanted to go, and Yagi-Uta saw them. Watching from beside a tree, Yagi-Uta happily commented in his mind that at least Sanda was having fun. He explained that no matter what anyone said, he was still just a child, acting cool even though they wanted to kill him. When Yagi-Uta said that, he suddenly became puzzled and commented that it felt strangely familiar. Then he saw the girl who had confessed to him when he was 15 in Nico, as she gazed at Sanda with a deeply in-love expression and a sweet smile. That brought back to him the feeling he had at that time, and he remembered what Sanda had said, that when he grew up, he wanted to be like him, which made him start to feel worried and think that he should not want to be like him when he grew older. He worriedly commented here that a child who did not appreciate the efforts a girl went through would grow up to be a good-for-nothing like him. Irritated, he snapped his cigarette while thinking that he no longer cared if they killed Sanda, and he said that he understood that Sanda could not possibly think it was ridiculous. He added that even though Sanda was Santa Claus, the real adult there was him. After thinking that, Yagi-Uta began walking behind the school without catching anyone's attention. As he walked, he arrived at a hidden space, and there he saw Namatame preparing her weapons to kill Santa Claus. He caught her attention and said that looking at all that equipment, perhaps she was Namatame from Class 10, which puzzled her, but she also agreed. He then calmly explained that if she was alone during the festival, she needed to be accompanied by a teacher. Well, for him, he added, this was perfect. Yagi-Uta then sat down and, after picking up Namatame's revolver, asked her why don't she play with him, whereupon Namatame's smile suddenly vanished and her expression became serious. After that, Yagi-Uta cheerfully encouraged Namatame to put aside those dangerous things for now and play something more relaxing with him. Yagi-Uta set down the revolver he had picked up onto the floor, and eventually Namatame answered that she understood. Suddenly, something sharp emerged from beneath her wooden sandal and pierced through, shattering the revolver, which shocked Yagi-Uta and made him nervous. Namatame then spoke in a disappointed tone, saying that she had sharpened her secret knife especially for this, then asked why he had moved his hand. She said she thought he wanted her to kill him, and asked if that was not what he wanted. Yagi-Uta remarked that now he understood how dangerous Namatame truly was, and irritably added that it was difficult for him to fight against a child. He said in his mind, speaking to Santa, that he should not have done something so out of character, like trying to take hits in Sanda's place, even though it was only natural for adults to protect children. Namatame explained that the reason did not matter. She said that any adult involved with Fumi Namatame would never walk away unharmed. Yagi-Uta said that in that case, it had to be treated as a serious fight. He then suddenly pinched Namatame's cheek, sticking out his tongue teasingly, and said that was for her attempt to stab his hand, which made Namatame ask if that was his move. As a counter, Namatame pointed a pistol at his body and immediately cocked it, clearly making him uneasy. While this was happening, the scene shifted to Sanda and Nico standing at the stairs. As they observed the festival from there, Sanda called Nico's attention and asked since when she had become bothered about being in the middle of crowds. If anything, he added, wasn't she the type who would plow right through them, which made Nico laugh playfully and say that she was the type who preferred watching people from above. Sanda then thought that perhaps he could find Namatame if he looked from where they were, and that maybe she was already looking for him. Nico noticed that he was focused on something else while doing that, so she shouted to get his attention and irritably told him that at least for today, he should look at her, which startled him and made him nervously apologize. Nico's irritation quickly faded, and she said she understood him. She explained that she was just so beautiful today that he could not look at her head on, which left Sanda silent and unable to respond. Nico added, however, that he had to look at her. If he would not, then why else did she take the time to dress up, which made him gaze at her? Nico further explained that in truth, the reason she had brought him there was because she wanted the two of them to be alone in a place where they could watch the sunset together. Sanda was puzzled by this, and before he could react, Nico suddenly leaned toward him and kissed him on the lips. After she did that, they locked eyes, and Sanda's face showed utter shock at the situation. Nico then said that he was pathetic and asked how he could let his first kiss be taken like that. She pointed out that now her bacteria had been passed on to him, and he would never have a first kiss again. However, Sanda was too stunned to speak and just stared at her in total confusion, while Nico added that she won and he lost, calling him an idiot. Nico asked him why he was not saying anything, and if he was surprised. She also pointed out that it was not like she cared, but then quickly added, or was it not his first kiss? And because of that idea, she panicked and shouted at him to hurry up and say something. In his mind, as Nico kept pressing him, Sanda thought in complete bewilderment that she had kissed him, a girl kissing him even though he was Santa Claus. He stared at Nico's blushing face and could not get out of his mind that he had kissed this girl's lips. He began to feel all kinds of delicious tastes, like flan, jello, pancakes, and many others because of it. However, that quickly turned into nervousness as he thought that Santa could not fall in love with a child. He also pointed out that adults' wishes were dirty, but said he could not even think about that. What he felt now, he said, was happiness. He then held Nico by both shoulders and told her face to face that once more. He remembered Yagi-Uda's words, that if Santa Claus entered a romantic relationship with a child, he would die. But he seemed to disregard all of that as he gave Nico another kiss on the lips. When he did that, it seemed even his Black Santa side was also giving Nico a kiss. He commented in his mind that Yagi-Uda had been right. He then said that every time he did something against Santa's principles, Red Santa would die a little and Black Santa's blood would boil. He then remembered Chairwoman Tetsudome's words about how foolish it was to want to grow up without ever hurting anyone and without knowing sin. And he said that now he felt he understood what she had meant. He then began sucking aggressively on Nico's lips, which made her uncomfortable. So she quickly punched him in the face while angrily saying what kind of idiot sucks with all their might on their first kiss. They then suddenly heard a loud bang that caught both of their attention, making Nico ask what that noise was while he showed a worried expression. Not long after, he realized what it meant, which made him even more anxious. He quickly turned to Nico and explained that he was worried about a friend, so he was going to look for them, and asked if he could borrow her red shawl. She agreed in confusion and asked what for, but he did not answer and only said he would be back soon and promised to return it. When he started going down the stairs, he briefly stopped and turned back to Nico to say sorry and thank her for what happened, where Nico replied that it would be better if he did not say that after a kiss, or others might realize he had no experience with girls. As he quickly ran toward the source of the noise, he also heard other students wondering what the noise earlier was, if it was a drum, while pointing to where it had come from. In his mind, he said that faithful to his wishes and without scruple, this was the time for him to shine. An aggressive adult like Black Santa. While this was happening, we returned to Yagi-Uda and Nama-Tame's situation, where Yagi-Uda was cornered while clutching his right arm, while Nama-Tame, pointing a gun at him, asked that if the duty of poor adults like them was to take care of children, then who would take care of them? After that, Nama-Tame fired her gun again, which deeply alarmed the wounded Yagi-Uda, but she only stared at him. Fortunately, Sanda arrived in his Black Santa Claus form, stopping the bullet by catching it with his mouth. He then called out Nama-Tame's name, and while showing the bullet he had caught in his mouth, he asked her if he was not the one she wanted. In the next scene, we went back a few minutes earlier to the moment when Nama-Tame had just shot Yagi-Uda in the arm. When he was hit, he commented in his mind that if she shot him, he would shoot her as well. That, he said, was how he had lived his life. He then drew his gun and immediately aimed it at Nama-Tame. However, because Nama-Tame was only a small child, he miscalculated his aim and pointed too high, which irritated him and made him comment in his thoughts that his target was too short. He explained that he was used to shooting at targets taller than him. and that all his training had been for confronting people taller than him, specifically Santa. Because of that, he dropped his gun and thought that fighting children was outside his area of expertise. Namatame then commented that adults were pitiful. If their duty was to protect children, then who, she asked, would protect them? Yagi-Uda, even while nervous, answered that well, they needed to take care of themselves. After that, we returned to the present where just as Namatame pulled the trigger again, Sanda arrived in his black Santa Claus form and caught the bullet in his mouth. After spitting out the bullet, Sanda asked her if wasn't he the one she wanted, while Yagi-Uda was left speechless at what he witnessed. He worriedly called out to Santa and irritably told him not to make him look bad, and what was more, what was he doing looking out for an adult? Sanda replied by asking if he too hadn't once been a child, which made Yagi-Uda pause and think that, well, he was right, but there was still a but. He remembered here what Sanda had once said, that Black Santa was dangerous because he treated children and adults the same, as if he were an out-of-control version of Red Santa. Sanda then added that children would one day grow up to become adults. He cracked his knuckles after that and told Namatame that she was not a child, but a person, grinning as he added that this was a fight between him and her, which made Yagi-Uda cry out in alarm to wait a moment. He said that never before had he heard of Santa fighting against a child. Suddenly, something caught both his and Sanda's attention, making their eyes widen in shock, while Namatame said that it was fine, and that this was the first time an adult had faced them with such honesty. More children appeared there who seemed to be her classmates from Class 10, and Namatame added that they would give him a fight, so they asked Santa to give them one in return. Sanda immediately recognized them as Class 10 students, while Yagi-Uda was left speechless, asking why they all had bob cuts, saying it was weird. As they carried their chosen weapons, Namatame asked him if he could be violent against all those children, which made Sanda irritated by the situation. Yagi-Uda told him not to answer that provocation and to stay calm, while Namatame invited them to begin. When two Class 10 students rushed forward, Sanda did not hurt them but instead hugged them, which greatly shocked them. Namatame was surprised by this and somewhat disappointed, saying that he shouldn't give her something like that. Sanda pointed out to them that Santa would never be violent. He apologized for not meeting their expectations, but said that was simply how he fought. Namatame, looking uneasy, asked if he was really planning to get out of this with something like the power of love, then muttered that it was so deceptive. She then asked, "Isn't that too cliché?" where Sanda questioned her statement about the power of love being cliché, then remarked that they really did think like children. He explained that the power of love made people do terrifying things, and added that he said that as someone who had just had his first kiss, so it had to be true. He then gradually tightened his hug on the two children, and after a while he let go, making them collapse to the ground with their eyes rolled back and drool running uncontrollably from their mouths. That greatly shocked Namatame and her companions, and Yagi-Uda pointed out that they had lost consciousness. Sanda explained that he had only tightened them until they fell asleep, and said there was nothing wrong with Santa putting children to sleep. The other students then rushed at him with their weapons raised, but he only repeated the same bear hug on them while enduring the blows from their deadly strikes, all the while urging the children who had never slept before to sleep close to Santa. When he embraced two more students there, he gradually tightened his hold, and even as he was being struck by the lethal weapons of the other students, he only shouted that he would make them have Christmas dreams. Those he hugged once again fell unconscious and collapsed to the ground, while Yagi-Uda was utterly shaken and stunned, commenting that so this was Black Santa. After a short while, Santa had put all the Class 10 students to sleep, and he carefully laid them down side by side with care. After doing that, he said that well, in a few hours they would wake up anyway. After that, he shifted his attention to Namatame and called her Miss Boss, saying she was alone once more. He quickly approached her, held her by both shoulders, and told her face to face that he would not let her sleep so easily because she had shot his friend, where Yagi-Uda told him that everything was truly fine and urged him to just leave. Namatame then closed her eyes and took a breath, before suddenly firing her gun, the shot striking Sanda in the head and slamming him against the wall behind him. Namatame then asked why no one had punished her until now. She pointed out his raised voice and the way he frowned, and thought about what would happen if she kept angering him. After that, she urged Sanda with a grinning smile that they hurt each other until one of them died, while visible concern showed on Sanda's face in that situation. While that was happening, we moved to the situation of Fuyumura and Ono, where we were shown Fuyumura wearing makeup and a kimono. Ono was clearly very attracted when she saw her. Overjoyed, she commented that she looked super cute and that the kimono looked amazing on her. She then asked how everything she wore always seemed to suit her so beautifully, to which Fuyumura answered that, well, it was because she had a tall figure. Because of that answer, Ono fell silent and just stared at her. In Ono's thoughts, she said she still really liked how Fuyumura never responded to her with things like hers looks good too, and it's cute. She went quiet after that, but soon Fuyumura thanked her, which made her add in her thoughts that she also loved how Fuyumura conveyed her feelings to the best of her ability. She also said that she loved how she made her absent-mindedness so clear. She didn't stop there, and added that she truly loved how her childishness stretched on endlessly. On Fuyumura's side, she looked around and thought to herself that she couldn't see Sanda or Amaya anywhere, so she was starting to get worried. Ono then called out to her and apologized for what happened the other day, which made Fuyumura wonder what she was referring to. So Ono shyly pointed out that it was when she asked her to undress to test her feelings. Ono's apology was cut short when they suddenly heard the loud sound of gunfire, which quickly drew their attention. Fuyumura realized that she had lost focus on what Ono was saying, and so she turned to her, apologized, and asked her what she said again. In her thoughts, Ono wanted to tell her to focus on her. She wished that she wouldn't go anywhere, that this moment should belong only to the two of them. She added that maybe she would have been able to say those words if she had stayed as a child. Instead, she spoke with understanding to Fuyumura, asking if she wasn't worried about someone, and encouraged her to go. Fuyumura was overjoyed to hear that, and she thanked her. She apologized to Ono afterward and explained that in fact, she had already been thinking about it earlier, but just couldn't bring herself to say it to her. Ono commented that it showed on her face, which embarrassed her as she thought Ono was only kidding, and so she also apologized. Afterward, Ono explained to us that the truth was, she had known all along. She knew that Fuyumura didn't have any romantic feelings for her. As she watched her run off, she said that Fuyumura was just a child more than anyone else. That she wasn't someone who would simply fall in love with anyone in particular, and that was why she said children were cruel beings. Around Fuyumura, she could hear people wondering what that sound was, to which someone answered that it seemed to come from class 10, which shocked the one she was speaking to. Another person said that they had earlier heard someone groaning in pain. Fuyumura then took off her wooden sandals because it was too hard to run in them, as well as her belt, which she said was too tight. She also apologized to Ono for that despite all her compliments, while untying her hair. After that, we returned to Sanda's situation, where Namatame was raining bullets on him. Some other students had already seen this, and one female student was very convinced that she was from class 10 because of what she's doing, while another asked who exactly she was shooting at. Someone else remarked that they couldn't see what was happening because of the smoke. Despite his injuries, Sanda calmly called out to Namatame and even apologized, saying that Santa would never hurt a child. He added that until the moment his body grew too tired to move, he would keep taking the bullets. To this, Namatame said, while rubbing her face, that if that was the case, then this would never end. Blood scattered across her face, and with delight she added that it was excellent. One of the onlookers then commented that they knew it. She really was from class 10, while another warned the others not to get involved. Someone asked if anyone had already called the teachers, but another replied no, and said that they would just end up getting killed too. Another asked, didn't the teachers just run away? Which someone else answered that it was all thanks to the juvenile protection law. Namatame continued to shoot at Sanda, and his groans of pain went on, while in his thoughts, he agreed with her that this could truly turn into a never-ending battle. Worried, he wondered what he should do. He asked himself if there was something important he had forgotten, something needed to defeat the horror and cruelty of children. Unexpectedly, before Namatame could pull the trigger again, Fuyumura suddenly arrived and delivered a powerful punch to her head that shook her world. Namatame fell over in shock, her face showing pure surprise. while Sanda was also completely stunned by Fuyumura's arrival. Fuyumura remarked that though she was big on the outside, she was still just a little brat on the inside, pointing out that she was just like Sanda. She added that this was the reason she was here, and followed up with a solid punch to Namatame's face that landed cleanly. Seeing this, Sanda began to recall his conversation with Yagiyuta a few days earlier, when they had looked out over the surroundings from the rooftop, and Yagiyuta had asked if he knew why the coming-of-age ceremonies were always held at night. Yagiyuta explained that the reason was because just before nightfall, the afterglow of the sun created an exceptionally beautiful sunset. He added that the few minutes of twilight could be compared to a 15-year-old, considered the most beautiful time of life. But, he continued, this twilight sunset wasn't only beautiful, it was like a balance that could barely be maintained, and he pointed out that it was the kind of sky that was literally terrifying. He also added that it looked like they themselves were in danger of adolescence, which made Sanda ask what he meant. So Yagiyuta replied that one day he would look at a sunset and understand. After remembering that, Sanda looked at Fuyumura, who was also looking at him and calling his name while holding Namatame by the collar. As he looked at her, Sanda told himself that this was the child who had awakened him as Santa Claus, the human who had released his curse. After that, he also said that his opponents here were children, and as he watched Namatame growing violent, he added that yes, he was Santa Claus, and violence should be stopped. Namatame quickly picked up her pistol from the floor when Fuyumura was distracted and tried to aim it at her. But before she could pull the trigger, Sanda instantly released his ski feet and carried Fuyumura away from danger, shouting at her to run, which made Namatame glare at them in anger. While this was happening, we shifted to Ono's perspective, where people were beginning to see the twilight together with their friends and partners, and her face showed an expression that wasn't entirely happy. In the next scene, the focus shifted to the students enjoying themselves among the ceremony stalls, and as they did so, someone passed by who immediately caught their attention. Their eyes widened in fear and unease, and it turned out that what they saw was Namatame walking seriously with a gun in hand and blood on her face. She approached one of the stalls and immediately aimed her weapon at the adult cooking there. She told him that she was feeling a little hungry, while the female student buying there grew frightened when she recognized her as someone from class 10 because of the number on her back. The adult at the stall looked puzzled, and without warning, she shot him in the shoulder, which terrified him completely. The surrounding students screamed and began running in panic, while Yagiyuta, who had been following Namatame, immediately instructed them to leave the area, calm down, and head inside the school building. After the place was cleared, Yagiyuta stood there staring at Namatame, left completely speechless. Amid the scattered chaos caused by her panic, Namatame sat down and began eating noodles. However, she clearly did not know how to use chopsticks, unable to get the food into her mouth. She then remarked that she hated chopsticks and added that children who did not know how to use them were proof they had never been loved by adults. In her mind, she also said that she had not intended to do what she did earlier. She claimed it was only legal for her to kill adults, but even then, she had still pointed a gun at a child. She thought that perhaps it reminded her of something when she saw a grown man and a child trusting one another, though she admitted she was unsure, saying it may have stirred up memories of the trauma she experienced with her mother. She then muttered in frustration while still failing to eat properly, adding that being alone at a festival was extremely boring. While this was happening, we were shown Sanda, Amaya, and Fuyumura hiding behind 3 fish statues as they observed her. Sanda commented that it looked like he still needed to face Namatame, which surprised and alarmed both Amaya and Fuyumura. Amaya called him an idiot and pointed out that he had only just escaped from her, and worse, had dragged him into this mess. He then turned to Fuyumura and told her not to just sit like that because her underwear was showing. Sanda replied that it was only because he had been afraid of being caught, and the scene briefly showed us how he had grabbed Amaya and pulled him away from the earlier incident. He then pointed out that Namatame was waiting for him. Even if she was a murderer, she was still a child, and Santa could never keep a child waiting. Fuyumura then asked if that meant he would just allow himself to keep getting shot at without fighting back, to which Sanda replied that he had no choice, that it was the only way to fight a child, because he could not bring himself to beat Namatame into bruises the way Fuyumura had. Fuyumura reasoned that children could hit one another as much as they wanted, which Amaya countered by saying that was a terrible argument. Fuyumura disagreed and said she did not think so. She explained that when adults hit children, it was called abuse, but when it was only between children, it was simply called a fight. Therefore, she added, they could hit each other until they were satisfied. Sanda thought about this briefly, then asked Amaya if he had any gummies with him, to which Amaya reluctantly answered that of course he had to carry them whenever he was with him. Sanda immediately ate the entire bag of gummies, which left Amaya worried. A moment later, Namatame glanced to her left, and when she saw who it was, a sudden smile appeared on her face. It turned out that Sanda, in his child form, had begun approaching her, and upon reaching her, she remarked that it seemed he had returned to his Sanda form, while calling him Santa. She then explained that she had never once gone to an event or festival with her classmates, and cheerfully shared that now they have the whole place to themselves. Sanda irritably responded that it was because she had ruined the ceremony, pointing out that she had already shot 3 adults that very day. He told her she should stop doing that, but she only threw her noodles into his face. Namatame told him that he was acting like a child and ordered him not to lecture her, which irritated him, making him retort that he was not lecturing her, he was fighting with her. He then slapped Namatame, and in return, she countered with a strong punch to his face. Because of that, his nose began to bleed, alarming him, and when it touched his body, he immediately transformed into his Santa form. He then explained that his body, whenever touched by blood, or even anything red that was not blood, would cause him to become Santa Claus. But if he ate a large number of gummies, he would revert to being a child again. By doing so, he could fight Namatame. After returning to his kid form, he slapped her again, to which Namatame simply countered once more with another punch to his face, causing his blood to fly again and transform him back into Santa. He explained that since he could transform, this made it an even fight. He swallowed again, consuming the huge stockpile of gummies stored in his mouth, which quickly reverted him once more to his child form, and then he slapped Namatame across the face again. Because of his repeated changing of forms, Namatame cried out in irritation that it was creepy and told him to stop, which made him angrily ask what was wrong with this girl. He pointed out that he knew it was scary, from suddenly changing from a cute-looking boy like him into a burly old man. He also admitted to her that at first, he had been scared of it too. Upon hearing those words, Namatame remembered something again about her mother. While they were sitting at the table, her mother had told her that she was afraid. She pointed out that her beautiful mother was slowly aging and asked if that was not frightening. She then added that youth was a treasure, to which Namatame had tried to disagree by saying it was not true, but in her mind, she explained that in reality, she was afraid. She admitted that as her mother grew older and began to change, the two of them were afraid of the same thing. After that, we returned once more to the present, where Namatame struck Sanda with another punch to the face, while he only told her to calm down and insisted that she did not have to be afraid. As Sanda gradually transformed into his Santa form, showing appearances ranging from a teenager to a young adult, and finally into a full-blown old man, he said that they were all the same, that they would grow older and change. However, it seemed that Namatame did not listen to him at all, and simply delivered another punch into his body. After receiving that blow, he swallowed another gummy, which turned him back into a child again. Enraged, Namatame told him that he had just reminded her of something truly awful, and with a furious expression, she declared that she won't forgive him. Namatame struck Sanda once more and continued thinking to herself that she would never forgive him. When Sanda did not counter with a slap, Namatame looked at him with curiosity, seeing him now gasping for breath. Sanda's breathing grew more and more difficult, causing Namatame to feel worried and to notice that something was no longer right. When Sanda tried once again to slap her, he could no longer even lift his hand toward her from sheer exhaustion. Fuyumura whispered to Amaya, wondering why Sanda seemed so badly damaged from a fistfight against a little girl, and side commented that he was starting to fall apart, where Amaya answered that he thought Namatame was not the cause of it, which made Fuyumura puzzled and asked what he meant. Sanda then spat blood, and his body suddenly twisted like a contortionist as he transformed into his Santa Claus form, appearing to be in pain just from that transformation alone. Amaya explained in a worried tone that Sanda had been transforming too many times because of the bleeding and that the continuous transformation was likely taking a toll on his body. He added that, to put it into words, the Sanda state body was that of a 60-year-old man, and that this transformation was like compressing 50 years of human growth and aging into an instant. As he imagined a 14-year-old boy jumping with all his might to suddenly reach 64 years of age, he added that it was exhausting even for a single transformation. He pointed out that Sanda's bones, muscles, and blood vessels were surely already at the limit of their capacity. In Sanda's mind, he said that his body was breaking down, and after swallowing another gummy, he began to revert to his kid form while anxiously thinking that his consciousness was fading. Namatame commented that so much for the creepy fight it seemed. She said that she had been watching him transform for a while and had realized from it how painful growing up was, while irritation could be seen on Sanda's face. While this was happening, the focus shifted to Ono, where she was shown kneeling at one side, appearing to feel pain in her body which caused her to kneel down. After showing this, the scene took us back to a point in time when Oshibu had gone to talk to her inside the bathroom. Oshibu explained to Ono that what was hitting her at the present moment was called growing pains. Ono wondered what that was, so Oshibu asked her if it was true that she experienced a lot of bodily pain at night and added that it commonly happened at night. Oshibu then approached her, and when he sniffed her, he caught the scent of honey soap and commented that this was exactly how a full-grown woman smelled. Suddenly, Ono felt intense pain in her right foot, which made her cry out in pain and kneel. So Oshibu explained that her body was in pain due to rapid growth. He pointed out that she had broken a taboo and had suddenly entered puberty overnight, then thought about how sinful that was, and said that perhaps that pain would show her this. Ono's eyes widened as she realized all of this, but she quickly calmed herself and told Oshibu that he was surprisingly kind for not going straight to the point, but that he should not worry about it. While kneeling and seemingly hopeless, she asked if she was right that she was about to die. She leaned against the wall behind her, and while gasping in pain, she said that it was her own body and that she knew herself best. She said she thought her body could no longer handle the increasing pain each night and that she was ready for it. Oshibu then began walking closer to her, commenting that he was surprised. He noted that she was not crying. She was not screaming. She had accepted death and was speaking to him as if she were a fellow adult. He brought his face close to hers and said to her directly that he wanted to drink with her right here and right now. Ono replied that her time was short, so she would refuse that and let him know that she wanted to spend all the remaining time she had with Fuyumura. After that, the scene returned to the present moment, where while panting, she worriedly said that night was approaching. The strain could be seen on her face as veins surfaced, and she added that she had never thought this day would come so soon. She then recalled her conversation with Oshibu and remembered his comment about how unlucky her way of growing up was, followed by a question asking her opinion on it. Ono gradually weakened from the unbearable pain she was feeling and tried to call out to Fuyumura, telling her to come back. However, it was not long before she could no longer endure the growing pain and collapsed onto the floor. Ono lay sprawled, seemingly unconscious from the pain. And after that, the scene suddenly returned to Sanda, who was also collapsed on the ground with his bones fractured from his repeated transformations. Namatame stared at him silently, while Amaya anxiously commented that Sanda stopped transforming, then added that it was over. After watching Sanda's contorted body without reaction, Namatame remarked that she still preferred him in his 14-year-old form. She pointed out that his skin was smooth, his hair bouncy, and his face was cute. She added that transforming into such an old man and fighting brought nothing but toxic to his body, and then declared that in this fight, she was the winner. Despite his battered body, Sanda began to laugh and commented that perhaps this was his first time feeling this way. Namatame's eyes widened in shock that he was still able to react, and as he struggled to move, he added that until now, maybe he would have been flattered, but with a voice full of rage he said he could not believe he could be insulted by being called cute. He began to force his twisted body back to normal while saying that he had never been pissed off at anyone in his life. Sanda stood up and began transforming back into his Santa Claus form. And as he did so, he said that for them men, they never thought about it and he had never said it before, but now he would speak what was on his mind. After fully transforming, he declared that a man was nothing if he was not cool. He added that he would entertain himself in his own way, through his own transformation, and said it was like endurance racing all over again, while Nama-Tame showed fear as she stood before him. On the side, Fuyumura began to think that it was not just a mere transformation. She pointed out that Sanda was becoming a real adult, and she also realized the same about Ono. And yet, here she was sitting and wondering. She then called out to Amaya and apologized, saying that she had to return to Ono. She explained that she had left her all alone at the worst possible time. Amaya was surprised by this and asked what about Sanda, so she answered that he could handle himself now, leaving Amaya speechless and utterly confused. In the end, Amaya simply agreed to what Fuyumura said, while Fuyumura ran with all her might, weighed down with deep worry for Ono. On Sanda's side, he raised his hands and repeatedly pounded his chest while urging Nama-Tame to come at him with her fists, whip, and gun. However, Nama-Tame refused, saying with resignation that she had already run out of bullets. Sanda froze at that, and eventually blushed in embarrassment as he realized his brave speech had gone to waste. He then realized that the repeated transformations had caused bruises and broken bones in his body, while Nama-Tame's stamina had also reached its limit from the slap fight and the recoil of her gun. Sanda readied his hands and told Nama-Tame that in that case, perhaps it was time to end it. He frighteningly declared that they should finish it with a bedtime hug. His words caught Amaya's attention, and in shock, he asked since when Sanda had done that. Sanda explained that he could hug children tightly until they fainted, which greatly worried Amaya and made him ask if that was really the right thing to do. Sanda also thought to himself that he could not use that trick unless he was in his Black Santa form, and he no longer had the energy for that. At that moment, Nama-Tame caught his attention, and when he turned to her, he saw her slowly stepping back before suddenly turning and running away from him, which left him stunned, making him comment that this was the first time she had ever run away. As she ran, Nama-Tame said to herself that she was serious about what she was doing. In her mind, she told herself that there was only one person who could hug her. She eventually stumbled and gasped for breath, and when she saw what was before her, she smiled while thinking that regardless of the fight, she could not let just anyone do that to her, because otherwise, she would forget her mother's hands. What she had seen was a pile of dried leaves, and she immediately ran and leapt onto it, saying to herself that she needed to run. She told herself not to forget and to remember her mother's touch and her voice. While lying on those leaves, she began to recall a point in time when she was much younger and being embraced by her mother as they lay together in bed. Her mother had called to her then, so she asked what it was, and her mother answered that she had something important to tell her and that she had to listen carefully. At first, she was puzzled, but she immediately obeyed, and as she looked at her mother's face, she noticed something. As her mother gently stroked her hair, she told her that no matter what she did, she could never be scolded by her again. No matter how many adults she shot, no matter how many festivals she disrupted, never again. After that, we returned to the present where a paper lantern carrying a candle inside fell, and when it hit the ground, it landed on the leaves at Nama-Tame's feet. This caused the flames to spread quickly across the nearby leaves, putting Nama-Tame in danger as she asked her mother what she meant by her words. She returned again to that moment in time when her mother spoke to her as they lay together, and her mother added that she should not worry, because right now she had friends. As if reminding her of Sanda's gestures toward her, her mother explained that those friends would never leave her alone, that they would listen to her, and that they would also scold her. She pointed out to her that she was no longer lonely. Because of the smoke around her, Nama-Tame started coughing as she continued trying to remember her mother by lying down and clutching the dried leaves. She gradually lost consciousness because of it, while Yagiuda noticed the growing flames and shouted to alert the others that the warehouse was on fire, immediately ordering someone to get a fire extinguisher. When he got closer to the scene, he asked those who had seen it if there were any students inside and commented that it seemed all the class 10 students had awakened and evacuated. The one he asked replied that it was good that everyone was safe, but wondered aloud what he meant by the students having awakened. Meanwhile, in Onii-Chan's side, as she weakened from suffocating on smoke and fire, she also remembered her mother's words telling her that from now on she should embrace her new friends. She saw a shadow behind the smoke and flames surrounding her, so she tried to reach for it with her hand. The fire continued to spread throughout different parts of the warehouse, growing larger and larger. One male student watching in distress asked aloud where the fire extinguishers were, and his schoolmate answered that the teachers were collecting them. Another commented that the flames were getting bigger, and one even asked his companion if he had seen something left behind inside, which made a bespectacled male student shout at him not to say such things. He pointed out that if anyone had been left inside, it was already too late. The one he scolded replied that maybe it was only his imagination, but his words were suddenly cut off when someone cried out for them to wait and urged them to look inside the fire. When they all turned to look, they saw Sanda carrying Onii-Chan out of the blazing flames and toward safety. Shock was visible on the faces of everyone who witnessed it, along with disbelief at what they were seeing. One student asked who Sanda was, while another, utterly stunned, pointed out that the fire did not seem to harm him at all. As Sanda carried Onii-Chan, she looked up at him, and he asked her if she had inhaled smoke and if she was all right. Suddenly, someone ahead of him commented that he had known it was an impossible task for a child, which immediately caught Sanda's attention and furrowed his brows. He slowly set Onii-Chan down and turned to the speaker, and with an irritated tone said that so this was the one responsible. It turned out to be Oshibu standing proudly before him. Instead of worrying about what had happened to Onii-Chan, he heartlessly remarked on how lovely it was to see such a waste of his time and money. Because of that, Sanda grit his teeth in anger, and with a voice full of fury declared that the one who would die today was not Onii-Chan, but Oshibu. He then extended his ski feet and charged toward this principal, burning with rage. While this was happening, Oshibu was then briefly shown counting, having reached the number 499, doing this while sitting on the floor, completely naked, showing a body marked by countless surgical scars. After that, we immediately returned to the present where, as Sanda charged toward Oshibu, he voiced his anger at him for having the guts to use children to try and kill him, declaring that now he should face him fairly, while Oshibu seemed to laugh at the situation. In Oshibu's mind, he said he could not help but laugh, urging Sanda to come at him and attack while calling him an ugly old man. He explained that the reason he made Sanda fight against the students from the start was only to build up for this performance, adding that the star of a show always needed a late appearance. He then began explaining how he would do it, starting with the quick toss of his black coat, its movement beautifully floating in the air, followed by the reveal of his ace card, and then a powerful strike against Sanda using his cane, thrusting it forcefully into his chest. The attack was so strong it seemed to pierce through Sanda's back as he staggered backward. The students who saw it had their eyes widen, and even Sanda's face showed shock as he stumbled back. When Sanda managed to stop himself from being completely knocked away, he looked at the wound he had sustained and saw that it had left a hole in his abdomen. Just as he was about to comment on it, Oshibu cut him off, saying he did not need any sweaty compliments right now, like how he was getting stronger, calling him Mr. S. He said that the kind of compliments he wanted to hear were things like how he looked younger or more beautiful. He then explained that he would never forget the humiliation from the night of their last battle, even if he grew younger all the way back to being a fetus. That night, while lying in bed, he shouted in fury that he would never forgive Santa Claus for seeing his post-surgery scars. He said that 5 people had seen his scars that night and compared it to being exposed to 500 million people. He added that the dignity he lost because of his appearance could only be restored through his appearance. That, he said, was the kind of training that truly worked for him. He described entering a room and sitting in its corner, saying that what he did was keep his reflection in his sight. As he matched Sanda /for/, Oshibu explained that he had a room full of mirrors where he could see 500 people at once within it. He added that he could meditate while all those eyes stared from different directions, just like what was happening now. He further said that for him, being in the public eye was the ultimate full-body workout. Sanda, furious, commented on the things he was saying after all this time, shouting in rage about what nonsense he was spouting while calling him a narcissistic, perverted old man. Yet while wearing that expression, he admitted inwardly that he could not take much more of it. He tried slashing Oshibu's face using his ski feet, but the principal easily dodged and even remarked on how good that angle was. In response, Sanda thrust his ski feet at Oshibu, but he dodged again by bending backward, commenting that he had that angle too. Oshibu countered by striking him on the chin with his cane, remarking that he also liked that angle. On Sanda's side, he began to worry that he might not be able to defeat him, since he could not see any weaknesses. The students watching their fight began to realize that this was the one they called God, and they started to resent him, saying that they knew he was nothing but a prowler, while another added how impressive their principal Oshibu was. They began cheering for Oshibu, shouting for him to protect them. Sanda, meanwhile, kept being beaten down and seemed unable to do anything but endure Oshibu's attacks. When he was knocked down, he worriedly thought to himself that the more they cheered for him, the stronger Oshibu became, and so he began to think that he had to turn the situation around, but questioned himself on how. On Oshibu's side, he gladly accepted all the praise he was receiving from the students. As Sanda watched him, he realized something. In his mind, he said that it did not really mean that he wanted to be strong, but rather Oshibu was just an old man who wanted to look unusually beautiful and young, and that was the reason he was trying to become strong. When he returned to himself, he admitted that he did not know his own reason, and all he wanted was to be strong. He began to question himself about what his purpose really was for all the fighting and falling from the very beginning. He remembered something from his conversation with Chairwoman Tetsudome, while his ears listened to the students cheering for Oshibu to get rid of him, calling him a prowler, and before long he seemed to realize something. He then approached a group of students who were watching them and blocked the falling, burning roof of the warehouse, their faces showing visible shock. Just as one girl was about to speak in fear, he began to explain that he knew he surprised them a lot. He told them that he was not a god, nor a prowler, but that he was Santa Claus, which clearly brought a gleam to the students' eyes. They only stared at him, so he continued explaining, adding that perhaps they had already heard his name, but that they did not need to believe in him just yet. In his mind, he admitted that this was only a way to distract them from Oshibu. But as he put it into words, he realized it now. He existed to make children believe in him. A moment later, Oshibu noticed something and wondered what had happened because the students' cheers had stopped. Sanda then called out to him, making him turn his head. When he looked, he saw Sanda already prepared to strike with his ski feet, and he remarked that it seemed all the training he had done had gone to waste, right before Sanda slashed his face with his weapon. While Sanda was sending out this attack, he explained in his mind that he had repeatedly thought about how people would trust in his existence, whether they would think of him as someone kind, someone who would help them, or someone who would never lie, but none of those rang a bell. Because of that, he asked himself how he could make people believe in Santa Claus, then answered his own question by saying he did not know. He said it was far too difficult for someone like him who was 14 years old. But he added that there was one thing he was certain of, and that was children never trusted weak adults. After sending his ski slash to the face of Oshibu, his face reeled back, while the shock and concern were clear on the faces of the teachers who saw it. Oshibu held his face after dodging, and as he lifted his body, he slowly removed his hand to see what he had sustained. However, when Sanda saw that his attack seemed to have done nothing, he irritably thought that he had dodged it, while the teachers behind him shouted out the name of Oshibu in alarm. That drew his attention, and when he turned to them, they angrily told him that he had gone too far, asking how old he thought Oshibu was, and that what he had done was an assault. After that, they rushed to Oshibu and fussed over him, helping him while asking if he was all right, saying they would call a doctor and that he should move slowly, which left Sanda silenced. On Oshibu's side, he seemed dazed, and while saying that he refused to age, a small scar suddenly appeared on his cheek. When Sanda noticed this, he grew deeply concerned, thinking that it was going out of control. Oshibu kept repeating that he refused to grow old as the worried teachers surrounded him. while Sanda, with a troubled tone, began telling them all to leave, warning that the place was dangerous and that they should let go of that man. After a brief silence, Oshibu smiled and thanked them for their kind concern, saying that he was fine. In the next instant, Oshibu was suddenly beside Sanda, which startled him. He invited him to take a moment for an adult talk, then gently guided him away from the crowd toward an isolated place. He asked if Sanda was ready for this, adding that because of him, he had been treated like an old man twice. He said that if not for his training, his scars would have come out again. He added that it was about time to give him a proper punishment for what he had done, and this time in the place they had gone to, on the rooftop, they would do it where no one could see them. Sanda asked what kind of punishment that was, and Oshibu, while unsheathing his cane sword, replied that he would die here. Scars began appearing on the face of Oshibu as he charged, saying as he moved forward that he rejected respect for the elderly. Sanda grew alarmed at his charge, but fortunately, when he slashed horizontally, he managed to dodge. The surprise was clear on Oshibu's face when he did so, while Sanda, after landing, was also bewildered. Oshibu asked what that was while calling him old man, then commented that he was not being nice. Oshibu prepared to attack again, but when he tried to stab the lying Sanda, Sanda managed to dodge by using his hand for support to twist his body to the side. Oshibu was shocked again that he had done it, while Sanda, after landing, also wondered if that was the first time he had avoided his attack. As a follow-up, Oshibu tried to slash him again, but he dodged it easily. Because of this, he said that he had never felt his body so light, then asked himself how he had done it. While Oshibu continued to charge, he said inwardly that this could not be a coincidence, and he pushed himself to recall what had just happened. Before Oshibu could reach him, he used his skis to propel himself upward, causing him to leap higher and dodge again, and while in midair he thought of turning his sleds against the wind, like feathers. He looked menacing while in the air, and while looking at him, Oshibu seemed in awe. He then landed on his 2 ski feet, and while feeling the wind, he thought about taking advantage of the strong currents above him. Oshibu clicked his tongue in irritation because he could not hit him, and in response, Sanda used his sense of the wind, thinking of moving a sled with it, and once again dodged easily. Oshibu remarked that it looked like he's livelier than on the ground, adding that he was like a drunken owl. In Sanda's thoughts, he said that maybe with just the right conditions, he had not known that Santa could move so much in the air. He remembered something like this, and we go back to a point in time when Amaya had ordered some books for him, and one of them was titled The Laid-Back Santa Claus. He thanked him, and after looking at the cover commented that so this was Santa, so Amaya informed him that it was more like the stereotype of a Santa at that time. Sanda then pointed out that he was on some kind of sled being pulled by animals and flying, which made Amaya ask how that was flying. He began to think whether he was using the wind to his advantage or an engine or magic, to which Sanda commented that it was pretty crazy. He began to say inwardly that getting a child today to believe in that existence was not an easy task. After that, we returned to the present where Sanda thought that, to be honest, he had not believed in Santa at first. He remembered the words given to him by someone to believe in him, then commented that now he believed in himself more than anyone else. After dodging another attack from Oshibu, he remembered the Santa Claus on the cover of the book Amaya had given him, and before long he managed to counter the principal with a ski slash to the face, while adding that he believed in himself more than anyone else because he was here. They both landed on the ground, but his was smoother, while Oshibu chose to touch his face. After removing his hand, it was shown that his prosthetic eyes had shifted out of place because of Sanda's attack, and he commented that he had never thought he would end up with more than just his surgical scars. He added that it looked like Sanda had put up a good fight, but said that if he was not aware of where he stood, then he was not ready to win yet. It turned out that Sanda had landed near the edge of the roof and managed to dig in his ski feet using his sword cane, and when Sanda tried to move, he could not, so Oshibu easily pushed him off, making him free fall toward the ground. Sanda began to worry about himself while also feeling irritated that he had lost again. Then a mysterious voice suddenly spoke, urging him to call the reindeer. His eyes widened in shock after hearing that, and before long his body slammed to the ground back first, clearly hurting him, but instead of worrying about his injuries, he began asking himself what that was. The scene then shifted to Fuyumura, who was searching around. After a while, she finally found Ono sitting alone near the fence. She was surprised to see her there and grew curious about what she was doing. She wondered if something was wrong or if Ono had just fallen asleep. But it didn't look like that was the case. Fuyumura walked closer, sat beside her, and quietly observed. Ono flinched at her presence, startled that she suddenly appeared. Fuyumura quickly apologized, saying she had kept her waiting. She then asked what she was doing there. Ono admitted she had been startled, but said she had simply been sitting there, waiting for her to return. Fuyumura couldn't believe Ono had really just been waiting in such a hidden spot, all by herself. She asked who had left her alone there, pointing out that the festival was already over. Fuyumura apologized again, but added that there was still time. She explained that the coming-of-age ceremony would continue until midnight that year. In the midst of the crowded festival, someone shouted that the warehouse fire had been extinguished, but warned the students not to go near it. The event had been extended thanks to Chairlady Tetsudome, who had made an exception for just one person. Meanwhile, Namadame was carried out on a stretcher, her body battered and bruised. She told Sanda that he could come visit their semi-basement classroom anytime. He agreed, saying he would drop by. Suddenly, someone placed a hand on his head, catching him off guard. It was Yagiuda, who greeted him with a good job. Amaya was standing behind them as well. Yagiuda explained that Ashibu had been put on emergency day off. Apparently, Sanda had really made a dent in him, at least according to the other teachers. But Sanda, exhausted, muttered that it didn't feel like a good job at all. How cocky, Yagiuda commented, then asked if he knew what adults usually did in times like these. They have a toast. Soon enough, beer, juice, and skewers were brought out. Yagiuda made a toast, clinking his beer against Amaya and Sanda's lemon juice. Fuyumura and Ono were with them as well. Sanda remarked that it sounded awfully mature to be making toasts. Fuyumura, however, felt like an idiot sitting there, while Amaya guessed Yagiuda simply wanted to drown himself in alcohol. "Don't be petty," Yagiuda shot back. Then he teased, saying that Sanda had an extra dose of manliness whenever he transformed. He even asked if he had ever seen the size of his banana. Irritated, Sanda tried to pull away when Yagiuda tugged at him. Yagiuda went on, insisting that as a fellow man, Amaya should take a look at least once so he could realize how small his own was in comparison. Amaya was taken aback and asked in disbelief how many beers Yagiuda had already had. After all, there were girls present. The others didn't really care, too busy enjoying their food. Yagiuda boasted that he was the type of man who could drink 100 bottles of alcohol without turning red. Amaya shot back that those were exactly the kind of men who ended up dying from drinking too much. Meanwhile, Fuyumura thought to herself that she was always told she looked bored at times like these. Ono, on the other hand, seemed to be having the time of her life. As Yagiuda kept drinking, Amaya, who was caught in his arm, asked Ono if she was eating enough, telling her to just say so if she wanted more. Ono thanked him with a smile. Hearing that, Fuyumura thought to herself that she really had a big appetite, while Ono's was tiny. She reflected, her own hair was curly, while Ono's was long and silky. She hated herself, but Ono liked her. And when Ono looked at her with that smile, Fuyumura suddenly realized something. She remembered how she had once begged Sanda, asking him to find her. It was like a child pleading with Santa Claus for something she doesn't have. The memory weighed on Fuyumura's heart. So she turned to Ono and asked if it would be all right for them to take a walk. Sanda overheard and froze in place. Fuyumura thought hard about it while both Sanda and Ono glanced at her. This time, Fuyumura resolved to act like an adult, not to be afraid to use her words. As they walked together, Ono was caught off guard when she spoke her mind, that the only reason they got along was because they were complete opposites. Ono paused, surprised, but admitted that it was true. She confessed that she had actually been drawn to Fuyumura's unsociable side from the very first impression. Fuyumura was stunned to hear her say that. Ono admitted there were times she had hated herself too, because she was completely the opposite of her. Maybe, Ono added, there wasn't a single 14-year-old who could truly love themselves completely. That was why adolescent love sparkled so brightly. It was just like the memories she had built with Fuyumura so far. Before Fuyumura could even process those words, Ono leaned against her shoulder. She thought about it, then softly called her name, and confessed that she loved her. Ono froze, completely stunned. Smiling warmly, she looked genuinely happy. She hadn't expected such a confession. After that, she simply closed her eyes and rested on Fuyumura's shoulder, while Fuyumura wondered in confusion. Meanwhile, back with Sanda, he grew uneasy when he realized that Fuyumura and Ono had been gone for quite a while. Behind him, Yagiuda was drunkenly trying to force Amaya to drink beer, though Amaya kept resisting. Amaya insisted they had plenty to talk about, that is, getting this drunk wasn't acceptable. Sanda, however, had sunk into deep thought, as if he had just realized something important. He admitted that Ono had once spoken to him directly. She had asked him to take care of Fuyumura, something he hadn't expected. Ono had told him that since he was Santa Claus, she was sure Fuyumura had asked for his help in order to meet her again. But the gift given to a child, she said, didn't come with a guarantee that it would last forever. He wondered if something might be wrong with Ono's body. Still, she told him to make sure he took care of himself, and above all, never let Fuyumura cry alone. As he looked up at the sky, the scene shifted back to Fuyumura. She was filled with worry as she leaned over Ono, trying to shake her awake, but Ono showed no response. Panic rose in her chest as she shouted Ono's name again and again. Other students nearby turned their heads at the commotion, but still Ono did not respond. A week had passed since the coming-of-age ceremony. Back in class, both Sanda and Amaya were taken aback when Fuyumura arrived with a completely different aura. She was back to her old self, expressionless, cold, and unreadable. Without saying a word, she walked straight to her seat next to Sanda. He greeted her with a good morning, but she didn't even look his way. From that day on, she hadn't spoken to him once. In the dorms, the boys discussed her. They called her Ofuyu. Magi remarked that she had always been cold, that she never talked to anyone, and her eyes hardly moved, like those of a reptile. Dezono added that it would be foolhardy to even try having a decent conversation with her. Sanda, however, felt troubled. From their perspective, nothing had changed, but he knew otherwise. A flashback was revealed. With chairlady Tetsudome present, Ono's unconscious body lay stretched out before them. Because of what had happened, Fuyumura had reverted back to her cold, closed-off self, the girl who only ever opened up to Ono. Tetsudome explained that Ono had died of growing pains. At that age, when the human body hit 18, the human body sleeps and grows for the first time. But Ono Akai had fallen asleep while still trapped in her immature 14-year-old body. Her cells had gone into overdrive, forcing her to become an adult far too early. Back in class, Sanda thought to himself that no one could have predicted things would turn out this way. He feared that Fuyumura might never recover. Then suddenly, she stood up and walked out of the room, leaving him shaken. If only, he thought, if only he had been more reliable back then. Later, a knife was shown. It was revealed that it was Sanda who had been carrying a knife. He followed Fuyumura and handed it to her. With a firm voice, he told her that if she didn't want to speak to Sanda Kazushige, then he would let her speak to Santa instead, for as long as she wanted. Fuyumura's blank expression wavered just enough for her to glance at him in surprise. Encouraging her further, Sanda urged her to stab him, to let him bleed as much as she wanted, because that would trigger his transformation. He pleaded with her to just say what was on her mind. To his shock, she grabbed the knife from his hand. Sanda didn't know what she'd do, and with one swift motion, Fuyumura cut off her own hair. Without hesitation, she transformed her long locks into short hair. Sanda could only stare in disbelief. She told him she no longer wanted to rely on Santa. As she continued cutting at the other side of her hair, she said she had already received her wish, just as expected, and now, everything else was gone. All that remained was despair. Driving the knife into the wall, she turned to him, eyes empty, and demanded if he still didn't understand. Ono was dead. She pinned Sanda against the wall, the knife pressed close enough to terrify him. He couldn't believe what was happening. Fuyumura declared that she didn't want to have anything more to do with him, and that she had nothing left to say. With that, she walked out, leaving him trembling as she said, "Leave her alone." And so Sanda tried to inch his body away from the sharp blades still lodged in the wall. Back in the dorm room, Sanda's red jacket hung over his bed as he sat in silence, lost in thought. He stared at it, frustration bubbling inside him. Was he really nothing more than Santa to Fuyumura? Was the real Sanda truly helpless and insignificant? Unable to contain himself, he suddenly stood up and yanked the jacket down, trying to tear it apart in anger. His dorm mates looked on in confusion, muttering among themselves about what was wrong with him. But Amaya only told them to leave him be. In his head, Sanda thought bitterly that it would have been so easy for Santa to shred that red jersey. Instead, all he could do was mutter through clenched teeth that he hated the color red. Later, lying on his bed, he kept staring blankly into space. The thoughts kept gnawing at him until finally he sat up. Rest was impossible like this. Glancing at the clock, he saw it was still too early for class, but even so, he decided he'd rather be in the classroom than wasting away in his room. He got dressed in his uniform and walked to class. But when he slid open the door, he froze. Fuyumura was already there, standing silently by the window. Because of what she had told him, he didn't approach or speak to her. Still, the worry etched on his face was unmistakable. Sanda quietly walked to his seat, set down his bag, and finally broke the silence. He said the classroom in the morning felt so pale, like there was no red left in this world. No Santa Claus, nothing at all, just pale and quiet. He added that he was only speaking as her classmate, but Ono, he thought, must have been happy to see her. For the first time, Fuyumura turned to look at him. Her face was as blank as ever when she replied with a simple, "I see." Sanda didn't know what else he could do to comfort her. But then, tears began to tremble in her eyes. His heart jolted in surprise as the tears finally spilled, rolling down her cheeks, until she could no longer hold back and broke down crying. Alarmed, Sanda jumped from his chair and rushed over. She wept openly, releasing all the grief that had been locked inside her since Ono's death. Not knowing what to say, Sanda tried to reach out. But before he could think of more words, he suddenly leaned in and stood on his toes, wrapping his arms tightly around her. In his embrace, she let every ounce of her pain pour out. Sanda could only hold her, thinking to himself an apology to Ono. He remembered Ono's request to Santa, to look after himself, so he wouldn't let Fuyumura cry alone. Even if he wasn't Santa right now, he resolved to fulfill that wish himself. He wasn't big enough to fully embrace her, nor strong enough to shoulder all her pain, but he still had the blue-white world of a 14-year-old boy, and he would give it all to her.